Friday night, here we go. Yeah, it's CrossFire. What is up, everybody? Great to have everybody here. You know, we were doing a little bit of, I always like to talk a little bit behind the scenes. I think it makes for a great radio show. We had a little mic issue. Hopefully the great Noof Nukem is with us tonight, by the way. I'm very excited about this. Hopefully we're able to have a clear sound from everybody tonight. Guys, let me know how the audio is, please. You guys in the chat are my audio specialists. Make sure everybody can hear us. I go by you guys. You let me know if things sound good. You know, it's funny, man. We did a show last week. It feels like forever since we were on the air, and it's been 1 week. But it's good to be back. A lot of people are saying, you know, the gaming news is slow. Some of the gaming news is slow, but there's still a lot to talk about. And lucky for me, the show's on a Friday. And a lot of things just kind of happened right after 12 o'clock noon here Eastern time. A lot of things kind of broke. We'll start with some of that. I want to say thanks to everybody, too. You guys have been tremendous. So many people writing me throughout the week, excited about the show. I see super mod chats out there. I see all you guys. Shout out to the great Domino Zero. He says, 3 years. About to beat Final Fantasy 16. Amazing game. Shout out to Domino Zero. The super chat's working, guys. It's a miracle. That being said, if you guys would look at that amazing description down there, you'll see a few buttons you can press right above them. That's the like button, the subscribe button. Of course, there's the join button to become a Mooch Maniac family member. Mean the world to me if you guys did consider joining the channel. Helps a lot. I speak to these individuals every single week. We talk on the panel. We talk after the show. Let me just call each one of these individuals out one by one because they mean so much to me. The great Sir X Man, JudaZuk, WoolleyGamer, who you're going to hear from real soon, MumbleRanting Gaming, Tyson Web 509, TrueWiddy, Big Chuck 777, Alphonso Carter, BRAP, who's hopefully getting done with his dinner as we speak, Jamie, Damion, the great Jimmy Harrison, who I was talking to earlier today, Andy Hart, Red Hood 420, who's going to be joining us hopefully next week, Hamsolo05, Rob Jones, DadOfWar, Night Ripper 7, Totodope, who's here, ThumbsThumbs, JC 2013, Passive Profit, Dexflix 27, Lord Metroid, RabbitGotTheGun, Fassbender, ArchWarAngel, who's here, Biggity 08, SonyVerse, SloMoBackSlap. Shout out to SloMo and the Great Gaming Forte, great DPS podcast last night. Our newest Mooch Maniac family member, Dan Hickman. Great to have Dan here. Dan, appreciate that. Our major Mooch Maniacs, RPG88, Captain Crunch, Capone is here with us. Truth Serum, RP Gaming, Sergeant 12, who's here. Julian Johnson, your boy Roy, Scolari's brother, Smokes 901, DC Gaming, Miko, Gaming with Persona and Jay Barry, who are back tomorrow at 11 a.m. for What's Up PlayStation. That's how I start my Saturdays. I hope you guys do too. Supreme Samurai, Tactical Gamer, Donnell Brown, That Guy Spinnies, Brian B, a.k.a. Delirium Blades, and our VIP Mooch Maniacs. He's here. I've been talking to him all day as well. Silent Merc, Button Basher Podcast, who's supposed to be joining us as well sometime tonight. Raji, Domino Zero, Shadow Assassin, the Wise Old Gamer, and our honorable mentions are out there without food, water, or toilet. Snoop will Poxgate on, Four-Star General Marty, the Ambassador Bison, Isaac Gentry, and get this work. Shout out to our forever Mooch Maniacs as well. Longshot 316 and the great Optimus Code. Guys, that being said, I want to say shout out to the great Jimmy Harrison. The super chat is working. What's up, panel? What's up, Jimmy? Jimmy, great to have you here tonight. And the great Donnell Brown. I just have to say thanks for a great show on Friday. I really enjoy the show, and I wish people would stop saying Sony is only pushing live service games because that is a lie. The super chat is working. Donnell Brown, thank you so much for the support. I always talk to Donnell. We talk all week long. So shout out to Donnell. Great friend of the show and myself personally. That being said, what an amazing panel we have for you guys tonight. Look at this. Will you look at this dais? Look at that dais right there. It's not easy to get this group together, by the way. Okay, I don't have a producer. I don't have a publisher. I don't have any of that. I have to reach out to these guys. These guys are very popular. They're very busy. And they're here for you tonight. The great WoolleyGamer here. He says, I may be saying it wrong. Evangelers assemble. Consolidation wars have begun. Wooly, we're going to get into that, buddy. But before we do, let me start with the great, you guys know him, Wednesdays, 9 o'clock Eastern, Basement Radio Arcade Podcast, BRAP. BRAP, how the hell you doing tonight, buddy?
Mooch, I'm doing great. Actually, your timing's perfect because I just finished dinner.
Great.
Yeah.
What's for dinner?
Happy to be here.
Was it a good dinner? What are you having?
I had a burger and fries.
Well, that's, to be honest with you, that sounds absolutely amazing.
Actually, a cheeseburger with fries. I got to throw the cheese in there.
It must be your cheat day. That's the only thing I could come up with.
Yes, it definitely is my cheat day. I usually leave cheat days for like end of the week, man. You know, like the weekend and stuff like that.
Well, I'm glad,
Usually-
buddy.
Yeah. During the week, I'm eating like salads and stuff. You know? Not the fun food, you know?
No, absolutely, buddy. I only get 1 day a week myself. It'll be tomorrow night. Tonight was very boring, but that's okay. Afterwards, we'll have a bourbon. We'll enjoy a little bit of gaming. It's going to be a fantastic Friday night.
Bourbon sounds good, man. I'm not going to lie.
Sounds amazing right now. The great Stick Figure. Great to have Stick here. Stick, great to have you here, buddy. I've known Stick for almost 10 years now through the YouTube and Xbox community. Great to have him here. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. You know, the great Merc is with us tonight. You guys know Merc305. Merc, let me tell you something. I don't know how the hell the NFL football season doesn't go 12 months, but for some reason, your football season does. But nonetheless, you are with us tonight, Merc, and it's great to have you of all weeks. How you doing this evening?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for the invite. Shout out to everybody on the panel. And yes, man, here, Florida football is not just the NFL season. Football is a 12-month thing here.
It's true. It really is.
Oh, I mean, just look at the NFL draft and how many kids from Florida are drafted. That'll the proof's in the pudding, as they say.
A lot more.
Anyway,
a lot more than New Yorkers. That's for sure.
Yeah, phenomenal topics today, and man, looking forward to getting into it.
I appreciate that, buddy. Great to have you here. Speaking of great to have him here, the great Mr. Badbit is with us. You guys know him from the trophy room. I love having him here. You know, Mr. Badbit, you're the only person who can have a PlayStation dedicated show, and people don't claim that you're a PlayStation guy, which is great. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it.
Even on my own show, man, this week was pretty wild. There was two people wildly upset because the thing that I like to do on my show, and yes, it is the Trophy Room of PlayStation podcast, where usually each and every Thursday, me and my best friend kind of talk about the latest, greatest, all things PlayStation, is that this week I had two Xbox folks on.
Wow.
To talk about everything closing out. Because I'm like, you know what? It's just going to be really boring if everybody's yelling at the sun. How about if I just have something different? You know, if we have like you know, God forbid we come to like a consensus, or like we meet down the middle, or, you know, we challenge each other's viewpoints in a respectful manner. Some people don't like it. Yeah, so maybe I've earned it. Maybe I am an Xbox. I just don't know, you know, but it depends on who it is. One day I'm a Sony pony. One day I'm an Xbox. I would like to say every day I'm a big dumb idiot. But I'm happy to be here with everybody to talk about all the things we're about to talk about.
Let me tell you,
that Lena Khan and that FTC and me wagging my finger and shaking my fist. So I'm excited to be here, Mooch.
Great to have you, Mr. Badbit. Outstanding to have you, as a matter of fact. You know, we're going to do this is, if I had a drum roll, I think I do have one of those sound effects, but if I had a drum roll, I'd do it now. Let's see if we can hear the great Noof Nukem. He and I were going back and forth for easily 15 minutes before the show to try to get mics going. Noof, with all of the respect and good luck in the world, how are you doing tonight?
Well, you know what they say. If you don't have a good mic, you can take a hike. And that's exactly what I did. Right out the door. But I'm back, and hopefully you guys can hear me.
You sound outstanding. It is great to have the great Noof Nukem here. You guys don't understand. Noof works Friday nights, and because of the time zone difference, he's over on West Coast time. We're never able to make this happen. And I just shot the Mooch symbol out there, and I said, you know what? Maybe he can make it. He says, you won't believe it. Mooch actually got home early. So he's here with us tonight. Noof, anytime you can make the show, you know we want to have you on. So Noof, you sound great. Great to have you here. I appreciate that, buddy.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be here. Can't wait to get into the topics.
Oh, we're going to get into it in a second. The great TCMF is here. You guys know. Listen, I had to get TC on tonight because, you know, TC said on the show months ago, Mooch, you keep bringing me on here and we keep talking about the FTC. Do me a favor. Bring me on the show when we talk games. I said, not a problem. That's not a problem, TC. Unfortunately, we're still talking about the FTC. But I've seen TC quite engaged on Twitters these days. TC, great to have you back on the show, buddy. I know that your channel's blowing up. Your past few videos have blown up. TC, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. Excited to talk more so about the FTC. You know, great stuff there. A lot of conversations. Actually, today is a spicy day, but I don't know. We're waiting on updates, but yeah, we're going to talk about it.
We will talk about it. We'll keep it brief unless the audience really riles us in. By the way, speaking of the audience, guys, please tweet it out. You on the panel, please tweet it out. You all have millions of followers that love and follow you everywhere. Let them know that CrossFire's live. This is a special treat. Again, getting folks over from across the pond over at the UK who are huge gamers and getting them to come on New York time, this is beyond a pleasure to have. The great WoolleyGamer is with us tonight. Wooly, I got to be honest with you. It's been too long, but we still communicate through Twitter and talk all the time. It's great to have the original Butcher with us on the show tonight. Wooly, how you doing this evening?
Oh, bro, you honor me too much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on, as always. Grateful to be here again and flashing it out with some new folks.
Yes.
Not had the pleasure of speaking to, and some familiar folks too. Really happy to be on with WarriWar as well. When he was a humble little fledgling channel of just 100 or so subscribers, I was really glued to his content, because he always he has everything concise, man. Everything's delivered in such a really well articulated, concise manner with his videos. And that helps somebody with me with attention deficit. I struggle to keep focused on things, and he really has the formula down to a T. So love your content, Worry, and great that you're here, bro. And
wait, that was about me? That whole thing?
Yes.
Of course it was, you donut.
Oh, I was muted. I'm listening. I'm like, it can't be fucking about me.
It's like, man, whoever this is, it sounds pretty darn
I
rad.
know. I want to sleep with myself now.
I've always done.
A lot of people want to sleep with you, Worry.
You know,
Oh.
it's the
voice.
deep voices. It's the deep. What did I say? Vibrational. The deep vibrational voices. Yeah, BRAP, Mooch, pleasure. As always, Mr. Badbit. And also, I've never spoken with Merc before, or TCMF. Congrats on nearly the 100K, bro. That's a big deal.
Yes, it is.
That's awesome, man.
That's on that.
Yeah, congratulations, my dude.
Yeah, that's
Thank
awesome.
you,
So,
I appreciate it.
yeah, looking forward to this. It's console edition, War Mooch. You read it wrong. Come on, man.
I know I
Get
did
it
read it
right.
wrung. I hate that I have
console edition. War.
console edition. I like to play on words, Wooly. Always love it. The UK is much better at the English language than we are. You guys know that, okay? So
And it
there's
was evangelizers assemble, because we know what good old Uncle Phil has been calling his progeny in recent records. In court, he'll always rely on them good old evangelizers to push this huge consolidation spree that's happening at the moment. It's a big catalyst, bro, and looking forward to digging into that topic. So,
well, we are going
show.
to get into it, and there's some late breaking news too as well. We'll get into it in just a moment. But you gave the best intro I could have done, Wooly. I can't top what you did for Worry. Worry, it's always great to have you here. I've known you for about 10 years as well. Getting your take, especially as we go through some of these topics tonight, is going to be a lot of fun. I hope you can stay for as long as you can, because I really want to hear what you have to say. Worry, how you doing this evening?
Good. I'm not going to talk as long as the last person talked. So thank you, and move on to the next person.
Okay, so
damn.
I want to start. I know there's some late breaking news. I am seeing that the
I know you want to get going. You can't wait.
the Ninth Circuit Court has denied the appeal. So it looks like it will come down to the CMA only, and what they kind of negotiate there. We'll get to that in a short period of time. I'll start with the actual first story here. And if anybody wants to chime in after I'm done, I want to say shout out to the great Major Nelson. Okay, Larry Herb. I always say his last name wrong. It's Larry Herb. Is it Herb? I always say Larry Herb. Herb, thank you. Larry, I think he's retiring, or at least leaving Microsoft Xbox to do something else. I want to wish him well on his next endeavor. But I will say this much, all things aside, if you've been following Xbox on any social media or any podcasts, Xbox is kind of just linked with the great Major Nelson. Him leaving is kind of a big deal. I kind of think it is a big deal. I think that he's been the face of Xbox for a very long time. He never got involved in a lot of the console war stuff, a little bit as the 360 and Xbox One stuff was taking off, but very, very few times. He stayed the game. He kept it positive all the time. I actually had the pleasure of doing a Twitch stream with him on my channel way back in the day. You guys will remember Soccer Cars. Yes, the great Rocket League.
Yes.
So when that came out, I actually got a chance to play with him and a bunch of other Xbox workers, and it was just an absolute blast. So I got a chance to talk to him
was I
behind the
with you
scenes.
that night or no?
I don't believe so, but
there was a night. It was Phil Spencer. It was Aaron. It was
no, that
Aaron
was
Greenberg. Larry
that was
Herb.
a chat.
I think it was you.
Yeah, that was when we were in a chat playing the game.
Yeah,
I don't think that was
we were playing soccer cars.
Soccer cars, yes, correct. The great soccer cars, which is still alive and thriving somehow, miraculously. It's an amazing, apparently people love it. It went free to play, and now it's really caught fire. But he was great. He's meticulous. The one thing I love about him is he's meticulous. I remember sending him the thumbnail and him saying, hey, you know, I like it, but can you change this? I don't care for that. And I like that because I got to be honest with you. It is his brand. So he wanted to make sure it was top notch. So I got a chance to hang out with him, game with him, talk to him. And I'll tell you, he's a stand-up guy, and he loved the Xbox platform. That was not just a shtick. That wasn't just a sales pitch. The man really bled green, and he was awesome. Just a great guy. I'll turn the mic over. Anyone else got any great stories, or whether they're good or they're funny, of Major Nelson? Anybody else that wants to say anything? I'm doing a little tribute to Major Nelson before we move on to our first topic.
I just want to shout out the white gloves, dude. He really popularized them with all the unboxings. I don't have the biggest fond memories of Major Nelson, but what I will say is, or remark on, is from what everybody else has kind of said. So I'm kind of echoing it here. Of just he really paved the way for a lot of the way we interact with not just these big corporations or these gaming companies, but how they kind of talk to us. Major Nelson, what is it? The Xbox podcast that he does kind of started that kind of role of how we have like the PlayStation official podcast, right? These feeds that talk to us, the consumer. So I want to kind of thank him for being on the cutting edge floor when it came to, whatever. It came to how to distribute your messages to the general audience. So as the big marketing guy in the room, I very much appreciate what he did for games. So shout out to you, sir. Enjoy a nice vacation. Go to Greece.
Yes,
I don't know, that seems nice.
I love how he always looks. He genuinely always looks pissed off. Like,
yes.
in every shot, he looks like he really doesn't want to be there. But I think that's just kind of been like a staple with Major Nelson in terms of like just how he looks, how he pulls a face, and it's very characteristic of him. But people laugh about it because they know he's actually a really friendly guy, and he's all smiles when you actually talk with him. But I think with the whole Xbox achievements thing, like that's kind of we wouldn't have PlayStation Stars if it probably wasn't for him. And PlayStation Stars netted me 70 quid for me to put towards a video game,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like Xbox in their younger years, especially, were always front runners in a lot of the infrastructural kind of software systems that made Xbox really stand out. Like, and kind of Major Nelson has always been like a major player in that side, and I would also say he's probably the less accountable individual for a lot of the mess ups that Xbox has had. So I don't think anybody's pointed any kind of blame towards him. Like if a game's marketed 5 years early, it was Aaron Greenberg everyone would look at. Or if things are going wrong at studios, it's Matt Booty people would look at. Major Nelson, he's kind of only ever been a contributor, not a detractor or a problem maker. He's always been a contributor to the success of Xbox. So shout out to him, man.
I agree.
I think the best way to describe him, at least from my point of view, is that he was an influencer before we knew what the word was or what it meant.
Ooh,
right.
Like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's his biggest contribution. He loved a particular brand, and he evangelized it in a way that wasn't fake.
Toxic.
Right. It wasn't fake. It was genuine. So he was essentially the first obviously there's probably somebody before him, obviously, that was doing it, but in terms of like gaming and talking to people and online, he was the first real influencer for a big brand like Xbox or PlayStation.
Yeah, and shout out to Silent Merc, who brings it up in the chat. He said Major Nelson's interview with Angry Joe back in the Xbox One.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say that when Angry Joe was grilling him about DRM and how you can just flip a switch and turn off the DRM, he was doing his best to hang in there with that interview.
It was really, really great. I got to be honest with you. The other thing was he would always have the new merch, and he would always have the new equipment. I remember when Xbox came out with that and I don't remember the name of it. It wasn't a Pro controller. This was back in the 360 days. Do you remember that? It was like a silver and gray controller.
Oh, yes. Oh, I love that controller.
He came out. He did a 10 or 15-minute show on it, Mr. Babbitt, and it was great. Listen, the way that he promoted it and the way that he showed off the equipment, and you could see he was genuinely so, like Worry said, he was promoting it, called an influencer, if you will. But like the way he did, I bought that controller the second it went for sale. So I mean, he just did some outstanding work. And yes, there are the Angry Joe clips, which are absolutely hysterical. So it's really, really great. I don't want to take the mic away from anybody. BRAP or Noof, TC, anybody got any stories for the great Major Nelson as we kind of send them off into retirement?
I don't have any personal stories with Major Nelson, but I will tell you this: when back in the Xbox 360 era, I actually tweeted about this. He was I remember he used to do a little like 4 or 5 minute update that he used to tell you what games were coming to the platform, and I believe it used to release on Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in that generation, man, I actually used to really enjoy watching that update every single week when it used to come out. Oh, this game is coming out, these updates are coming, this feature's coming to the 360, and it was something that generation that was just, I don't know, it was something that was so new with the whole online gaming, and you have Major Nelson want a little video you used to be able to see, and you get, all these features coming games. I don't know. When I saw that kind of went away, I kind of actually missed it, man. And then from there, he kind of set the trend, as somebody said earlier, with a brand like Xbox actually doing their own podcast, which then in turn, a lot of people have kind of followed suit. He's kind of almost like a gaming podcast pioneer of sorts, if you really think about it. You know what I mean? So when I think Major Nelson, I think those two things specifically, man. Obviously, his brand loyalty, incredible. Man, I wish him the best, and I wish him the best on whatever his next endeavor is.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And I think it's great to kind of do this tribute. Like I said, we all have a lot of memories. He's been with the organization for a very long time. And like I said, he didn't get into the whole, he never followed a bunch of people. I can't remember who said it. Who said he looked angry most of the time? Was that
me?
Was that you, Willie?
Yeah.
Willie, you nailed that. Even when he would pose for a picture with fans, he looked like he didn't want to pose for the picture.
He's about to drop an F-bomb every time, bro.
And it was like, but that was him. That was him. So if there's no other ones, we can get to a little bit of the late breaking news here. Anyone else got it? BRAP, I can't believe you don't have a story. I thought BRAP was going to be. I thought BRAP was going to have at least 10. I thought he was going to. Oh, go ahead, TC.
Sorry?
Was that TC who said that? I apologize. I can't see.
Yeah.
TC, go ahead. Let's hear it.
Yeah, you're low.
No. Is it low?
Let me turn TC. Let me see if you're on 113%. I'll bump you up to 120.
I don't want to be the guy that breaks that news, but yeah, I don't know if you've been watching Twitter, but it's pretty apparent.
Yeah. I guess I gotta switch to my recording mic, but if you could hear me just a bit, it's the only thing I remember from when you said it, when you asked about it, Mooch, was I don't know if anybody remembers that what's his name? Boogie? What's his name? Boogie 298?
2988
Yeah,
or something? Yeah.
When he did the unboxing of that's the first time I've seen an executive go onto a YouTube channel, sit down with a YouTuber and unbox a console. I don't think I saw like Sean Layden. I love Sean Layden, but I haven't seen like a Sean Layden or a Jack Tretton or obviously not Jim Ryan going to a YouTube channel and hanging out with the dude to unbox a new console. So that was pretty cool when I first saw it.
Absolutely. No, and it was, I think we mentioned the white gloves, the infamous white gloves when he brought that out for the Xbox One showing. It was, again, the thing about him was he was just so excited about it. Of course he's being paid to do that. I understand that. That was his job. But at the same time, he was genuinely excited about the platform, the games, and what the brand stood for. And coming from the Xbox 360 era and coming out like so on top, Xbox One, I thought, had all the ability in the world to take over. And of course, they kind of shot themselves in the foot with a couple of decisions. Say again, I apologize. Is that you, Merc?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. So I think that I wanted to just say, again, shout out and great career out there in Xbox to Major Nelson. We'll say that. I did have another topic here that we're going to talk about, but we'll kind of jump forward here. Microsoft's wins the injunction trial against the FTC, files for the appeal with the Ninth Circuit Court, and it is denied. It is official. It's denied. So now it is legitimately just going to be the CMA and the negotiations with Microsoft. So TC, let me start with you just because you happen to be the FTC resident specialist as far as I'm concerned. TC, where are you on this as far as the late breaking news that just literally broke 10 minutes ago? And that's why I actually made 2 thumbnails. I have the one that's that we have here that says round 2 if we were going to go into Monday, and now I have another one that I'll put up after the show because I knew that the decision may come during the show. So TC, what do you think about this and where we are? And you don't have to talk about just the FTC or the court filings. What does this mean for you as we move into what will be, as Wooly said earlier, the consolidation wars?
Again, for me, I think I've remained consistent on this. Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, Take-Two. I literally was going to reply to somebody on Twitter because I've regurgitated this into oblivion. Grand Theft Auto, GTA. Those are 2 companies, 2 games owned by 2 big companies that I don't think should be owned by PlayStation or Xbox. Bethesda, I'm going to repeat it again. I've said this before. I was like, all right, Xbox, take Bethesda, compete, develop those games. Call of Duty was the one that I was like, that's the one that I don't think should be owned by anybody. Even if it's going to be multi-platform, you don't know how long that's going to last. 10 years, I'm not sure. But I'm not for it. And I think I've said this on every podcast we've been on here, but it is what it is. We're here. And it looks like the CMA, from what I've seen, I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'm just following like everybody else is following here and there. It looks like the CMA is negotiating certain things and pretty much just looking like this is kind of done. So it is what it is. I'm curious to see what Sony does in return. Is it going to be more funding into their games, or are we going to hear about that Square Enix acquisition that Greg Miller mentioned last year, and then nothing happened from that? He doesn't know what happened there, but that's pretty much how I feel, because I think on this podcast I've said so much on this. I don't know what else to say anymore.
No, that's fine. No, TC, that you've said a lot and you've said enough. Now, BRAP, you very kindly called me at 10 o'clock in the morning to get my blood pressure
10 o'clock, yep.
all excited. So BRAP, but you have other concerns, and I see a lot of people, cheering in the audience. You do have to remember a lot of the big games that we're talking about with Activision. This is good for Microsoft's bank account. But as far as gamers go, these games for the most part will remain on PlayStation and Xbox. And now according to Phil and company, we're going to see BRAP. We're going to see Call of Duty everywhere, right? We're going to see it on the Switch. You're going to see it on your phone. You're going to see it on the toaster. So my point to you is what do you think about the future? This will spark something that changes our future and how we kind of start playing games and how we kind of start seeing games consolidated through different companies. I think this is going to open up the floodgates, and it will change how we play games. It'll change how games quality outputs. When you go from just owning a few studios like Microsoft did end of last generation to now where they are with Activision and ZeniMax, that's a huge get. So BRAP, what were some of your concerns just as us gamers moving forward? And this isn't something we're projecting here a bit because we're talking years out, but consolidation it's not all roses like everyone's kind of talking about in the chat. It does have a possibility of some downfalls. And that goes, again, what TC said. That goes for Sony, and it goes for Microsoft.
Look, I've been very adamant. Like, even if this was Sony buying ABK, I wouldn't be for Sony buying ABK. I mean, you're talking about the consolidation of 2 of the top 10 publishers in the industry, where the top 10 publishers account for 70% of the revenue. Like, do you really want that consolidation? We're talking about the potential commoditization of video games, and we've seen commoditization of entertainment, and there's an impact to quality there. I mean, is that what we want? That's not what I want as a consumer. So I don't buy the notion that this is a win for consumers. I've seen that talking point bounced around a lot. Oh, this is a win for consumers. This is great for gaming. Well, it's not a win for all consumers. It's a win for consumers who want a cheap entry into video games, which I guess is fine, but there's a downside to that. There's an impact to creativity. There's an impact to innovation when you start lowering the level of entry point. Because again, this is about dollars. This is about money. I mean, it takes money to innovate. It takes money to create. And when that pool of money is dwindled, and I hate to use the word cheapened. I mean, that has impacts. We've seen that in the record industry. We've see that in entertainment and Hollywood and television. I mean, so I mean, we may be seeing this with gaming. Again, this once you set this precedent, this mass consolidation, you have two of the largest publishers combining together. You're removing publishers from the supply chain. That's going to have a ripple effect. I mean, you got to remember, EA, Take-Two, they're publicly traded companies. They have fiduciary responsibilities to make their shareholders money. If Bobby Kotick's getting $400 million payout, don't be surprised to see the shareholders of EA and Take-Two start tapping their CEOs on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, who can buy us?" And the only companies that can buy them at that amount, not Sony, not Nintendo, but the Amazons, the Metas, the Googles. I mean, they're the companies that can kind of wield that paycheck. I mean, and that's kind of been, again, I think we're kind of and this is kind of long-winded, but I think we're really at an inflection point with regulatory and even antitrust law. And I think that if you look at, if you go back and you look at case law, historically speaking, I mean, we've hit inflection points with case law where, there's been progressive attitudes towards case law that where the case law is kind of behind the progressive sentiment of law and things that should be done to better improve societies.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where we're at right now with mergers and the influence that big tech has. So, and I'm going to have to disagree with Noof Nukem here. Like, I don't think it's a waste of taxpayers' money. Like, you're not a U.S. citizen, so I don't know why you're commenting on that. Like, I'm here in the U.S. I pay taxes. I'm okay with the FTC, which is their congressional mandate to investigate and to kind of tug at the at enforcing the anti-competitive, antitrust regulation and law. I'm okay with them looking at trillion-dollar companies, especially big tech, considering the in Canada, you guys don't have like a Facebook, or you guys don't have an Amazon. You guys don't have the technology that wields so much influence.
Why you hitting on Canada like that?
God damn it! Don't go too hard on them, BRAP.
I do take some issues with people from outside the U.S. trying to comment on
on
matters of U.S. Yeah,
we got Mint Mobile,
which was just sold for $1 billion to a U.S. company,
and they have the best sports game ever, hockey.
They do have the best.
That
I will
is correct.
say that, but the U.S. took that over too. We have the most teams. But look, I just again, I don't have issues with due diligence. I mean, the FTC is doing their job. I mean, this is their mandate by Congress. This is Joe Biden is the president of the United States. This is, if you look at his executive order on anti-competitive behavior, I mean, this is one of the things that he wanted the FTC and the Department of Justice. And no stiff figure, I'm not hurting. I'm not a child. That's a very childish take. I mean, you may be a 40-year-old man, but you have the brain of an 8-year-old. I mean, no one's hurting here.
Hey, I'm a 31-year-old man with a brain of a 9-year-old. I think
that's true. What we're trying to do is we're trying to have a very high-level conversation, which you're not capable of. But the reality is that again, I mean, this is the Biden administration is in power right now, and the Joe Biden, whether you agree with him or not, has put out an executive order that he wants the FTC and the DOJ to really look at large corporations, these big mergers, and they want to protect small businesses. They want to protect VC, venture capitalists, and they want to look at organizations such as healthcare, pharmaceutical companies, and big tech. This is the mandate of the Biden administration. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. You have every right to not to agree with it, but that's just the reality of the situation. If you don't agree with it and you're an American citizen, you can always vote for the Republicans. I mean, part of the, what people don't realize is I see people pom-pomming the reduction in the budget for the FTC by Republicans. But you got to remember, Republicans historically are pro-business and pro-deregulation. And that deregulation, historically speaking, hasn't really benefited consumers. It's one of the reasons why we have the housing crisis here in the U.S., because mortgages were badly deregulated by a Republican government. So those are things to consider. Again, no one is, I see people saying, oh, BRAP's hurt. No, I don't care either way.
What are you running for president, BRAP? I just want to.
No, I was gonna say that was a great.
It's like,
I just want to interject one thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to say, Joe, BRAP, Joe Biden did not write that. Somebody wrote that and put a pen in his hand and said, sign this, please. It's an order for ice cream, Joe. That's
Well, he must
You
be
ain't
sleeping
wrong.
worry. I mean,
right.
That's
There's no
probably very
chance you're
true.
like that.
It's like
Sleepy
chocolate
Joe.
or vanilla. They're like,
Yeah, but that-
anything
Right.
you
He's
want.
like, oh, can I get wet nuts on that? Yeah, just sign this right here.
yeah, but that's his,
All right.
but that's his. That's kind of been his.
Yeah.
His executive order and why he tapped Lena Khan and on the shoulders to kind of spearhead this. So we're just at an inflection point right now. There's some, and that's fine. I mean, you could disagree, and that's fair. But what I think is a little ridiculous is people saying, oh, cry, tears, salt. No, this thing's a little more nuanced and more complicated than that. It's even more complicated than being like, oh, the FTC's waiting taxpayers' money. No, we pay the taxpayers' money to the government to do things like this. And I mean, I think in my opinion, I think this opens the potential for mass consolidation, because again, you have these big publishers who are publicly traded companies. Their CEOs have fiduciary responsibilities to, to make their shareholders money. And what's a quick way of doing that? Be acquired by a company that can afford to pay a premium dollar to what your stock value is worth, which is what's happening with ABK. The other thing I'll mention too is, I don't think that I've seen people say we won. I'm not sure exactly what anyone won. I'm not sure exactly how. I'm still waiting for
It's
this.
like top trumps for these guys, bro. It's
Well,
like
I'm
they view
still-
this
I'm
shit as
still
like
waiting.
a Dragon Ball Z fight, and it's silly, it's juvenile.
Well, I'm still waiting for
I
someone
want
to
to
really
see Jim Ryan
articulate.
go Super Saiyan 3. I don't know
Well,
about
I'm still waiting for someone to articulate, like, if you're
Yeah.
saying Xbox One, that's a very childish perspective. Like, you're just being lazy. There's no critical thought there. But what I want to know is how do gamers win? How did the industry win? Like, no one's explained that. The only thing that I've come to think, the only people that really won from this deal are people in the Xbox ecosystem, and that's fair. I mean, Microsoft has a right to acquire companies and to be able to compete. I don't have an issue with that. I didn't have an issue with their acquisition of ZeniMax Bethesda or their the studios. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
My concern with the ABK is that, just again, considering that this is a huge publisher, this is really going to have ripple effects, I think, throughout the industry.
Yeah.
People are complaining about Sony, and a lot of the Xbox guys like, oh, Sony's, they don't allow Xbox to compete. I have called bullshit on that and I can provide reasons later on the podcast why I call bullshit based on Microsoft's behavior, the Xbox and Xbox 360 generations, where they were actually outbidding Sony, and Sony was actually pretty much a powerful player in the industry at that time. But I do think that this is potentially going to open the doors for more mass consolidation, and I don't necessarily think that's good for gamers. I mean, anytime that you subtract suppliers from the market, that means those suppliers have more power. The people that own the supply chain have more power, and we've seen instances in mobile and ISP here in the U.S. and entertainment. Those things really haven't necessarily benefited consumers, and they haven't necessarily benefited the creators as well. You look what's going on in Hollywood right now with the Writers Guild. I mean, basically, the subscription services are saying, you know what, we're going to sit here, we're going to sit idle. They need us more than we need them, and you know what, fuck them. And that's basically what's happening. I mean, do we want that in gaming?
Right.
Maybe not. I don't want that in gaming.
No.
So I think people should be careful. And again, the we won. This is good for consumers, good for gamers. I think it's good for gamers who play Call of Duty and want to be in Game Pass. But if you don't play Call of Duty and you don't subscribe to Game Pass, is that good for you? And then there's the impact potentially to those who play Call of Duty on other platforms and lose access to things like double XP. And those are things that are being taken away from other consumers. You can't sit there and say it's great for all consumers when there's consumers that will lose in this deal.
Right.
No, go ahead, Wooly.
God, I can't wait till I'm booed by this chat. Let me tell you.
Oh, I know.
something.
Yeah, right. The chat is rough tonight.
hold
Guys,
on.
listen, I'll tell you, you got to respect everyone's opinions. I think BRAP made some good points. I do want to hear the rebuttals from Wooly if you want to chime in, and then I want to hear Noof as well.
Yeah, I'll just say, well, first of all, just just bouncing off something BRAP said, the reason why the Xbox fanboy base rather, trying to make out like suddenly third-party exclusivity deals are a bad thing, even though they grow the industry. Like literally, the reason why you're getting a Kojima game on Xbox and a Kojima game on PlayStation is because Kojima stayed independent so that he can make deals with multiple platforms and not be tied down to one single platform. Like it enables and funds developers whilst enabling them to get better and better and make better games down the line, and not shrink them or take them away or isolate them from making deals. But regardless, the reason why third-party exclusives are suddenly bad, even though they've always existed, is because Microsoft became shit at them and then created a service model that doesn't provide enough return of investment for large third-party investments to be feasible. So they stopped doing them. And they stopped doing them, and because they're pushing Game Pass, it doesn't provide the return on investment for large third-party investments because they're not making sales. It's cannibalistic. It's a loss-leading model. And by doing that, they're literally cannibalizing. They're trying to isolate all this IP into their own little four-walled ecosystem. And it's going to leave publishers. It's going to create a reactionary shift. And I think the reactionary shift is going to dwarf the actual acquisition itself, because a lot of publishers are not going to be looking favorably at Microsoft right now. It paints an ugly picture because Game Pass, it eats up everyone whilst Microsoft grows. Microsoft grows, but only Microsoft grows. It's not a contributory service. It's a leech. It's a cannibalistic service model. And it detracts customers away from buying content, and that's not what publishers outside of Game Pass want. They have to literally compensate devs in the short term for the loss of sales, so that their content can feature on Game Pass. But that's not feasible long term either. That's loss leading for Microsoft. So what it does is it necessitates consolidation. It necessitates acquisition. And anybody cheerleading this is literally just cheerleading the corporate agenda of a monopoly that wants to monopolize the gaming market. And Sony being competent, yeah, you could try and argue that that's a monopoly, but it's nowhere near as egregious as a monopoly as an incompetent platform buying everything to force you to invest money into their pockets because they can't make profit in a way that's healthy for the industry. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you want Microsoft of all companies, who literally subpoenaed Sony to try and reveal how they run their studios because they're so shit at it? Why would you want them to own and run Call of Duty? Why would you want them to own the most prolific IPs that we depend on for good gaming experiences, like Elder Scrolls and freaking all these amazing IPs down the line? Why would you want Microsoft of all bodies to manage those studios now? Mm-hmm. Well, because they've not proven that they can manage studios well. And it's like you're just cheerleading this blindly, this huge consolidation, calling third-party investments bad, just so you can get free shit. That's literally what it boils down to. And so I'll never take this argument seriously, that like all these people who have cheerleaded this, especially in positions of kind of prolific exposure, like YouTubers and content creators, and people who even work for like the big guys like IGN, like Destin Legari, they should know better, because they're pushing a compromise. They're cheerleading a compromise on everyone but Microsoft. And that's what Game Pass will be.
I think a lot of people...
they don't care, because they're making money off of people who want to hear that news coverage. I mean, they're I mean, that's what they're doing. I mean, we see this, in news today, news networks today. It's not about reporting the news. It's about opining and providing a sensationalist take to drive viewership. I mean, that's what guys like Destin Legary are doing.
And BRAP, I'm seeing people argue that Microsoft will only own COD, not manage it, in the chat. Actually, no, sir, that's not correct. Well, because how will COD be tailored to Game Pass, to a subscription model, if Microsoft don't have a hand in it? Like, COD will have to be tailored to basically be given away for nothing, to be thrown into a bargain bucket, because Activision make games to sell. That's always been how they've made games. They don't make games to put onto a subscription service. Bobby Kotick just the other day said, literally in court, that they would not ever consider putting their games on Game Pass day one if they
Right.
weren't acquired.
Yep.
And so you got to ask yourself, well, if Game Pass is the future of Activision Blizzard games, then how the hell can you say that Microsoft aren't going to have a hand in Activision Blizzard games? Like, it's going to change them for, like, you are so naive to think that this won't affect the quality and the output of that, like it will down the line for ZeniMax as well. The exact same situation.
I do agree that this is going to have a butterfly effect for sure. A shout out to East West. He says, Mooch, the arguments your panel are making, we're thrown out of federal court. What are we doing? East West, what we're talking about is what the panel, I believe, is talking about, is what their feelings this ripple effect will be in the future. And I will read the super chats in a minute here. Noof, what do you think about this when you hear it? I mean, a lot of people, I'm reading the chat. The chat's very interesting here. A lot of people really are pom-pomming this and thinking that they won. But, you know, when it comes down to it, you look at Halo and you see how Halo is not doing well. You look at Gears. Good luck finding a Gears multiplayer lobby. It's not doing well. You look at Bethesda and you see Redfall come out at one of the lowest scores of the year. You see that Starfield is where the rumors it's coming in hot. It's probably going to be just fine, but it's coming in hot from certain people that are behind the scenes. So when you say, oh, good, I'm glad Microsoft's now going to take over 13,000 new employees and a plethora of new IPs, and you're already seeing people leave. We didn't really get into it, but a lot of people have already left 343. People have left the coalition and Rob Ferguson, etc. Now he's back with them. But my point being is you had people from Playground Games leave. The Fable narrative leader has now just left that game. People are leaving. Remember, the IP is as only good as the game developer. And that's the same thing that goes for restaurants. The name of the restaurant is only as good as the chef in the back of the kitchen. So when the chef leaves, it's just a fancy name, and eventually word of mouth will put that restaurant out. So, Noof, when we sit here and we're that excited, the concern isn't about Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo. It's about games and gamers, right? We're the ones playing and paying for these games. What do you think when you see all this and you're seeing the panel's response, you're seeing Twitter's response, and you're seeing the chats?
Well, anybody who's followed my content for years certainly knows where I feel about the game service industry, right? Mm-hmm. If I could turn back the clock and get rid of all of them, I gladly would. And that goes for all those subscriptions that people buy with the movie stores and stuff. Look, I would roll back the clock. I'm a stubborn old bitch that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Look, if you're gonna look. How many streaming services are there now? You got Disney, Hulu, Netflix. I mean, look, then the list goes on.
Right.
They can't all be great shows. They can't hit with every single show that comes out, so they got to have a plethora of content. It's up to the user to basically decide what they're going to watch. And then it has to be priced fairly. We saw what happens when they start jacking up prices and the content sort of takes a dip. It goes down. And you know what? To any of the smart Xbox fans out there, the people that are just diehard into that ecosystem, well, I hope if and when, if it ever happens, I'm hoping that it's going to go the reverse effect. But if the content starts to suffer and things go down, then I hope people will speak with their wallets and people will drop their subscription and then people will start to listen. At the end of the day, you're absolutely right. The games are only as good as a chef in the kitchen, so to speak, right? You got to be your studios. And we certainly are aware that there are problems at Microsoft. There's no denying it, and fans shouldn't deny it. There's something amiss when you have that much dissension, when games constantly come out broken or delayed, but they're not the only ones in the industry. They have taken on a lot, and they're going to take on a lot more with this Activision Blizzard acquisition, right?
Yes.
But we can't, chastise them for a future that isn't even set yet. You know what I mean? Like, they haven't really done anything. They've acquired them. They're going to leave them to their own accord. They intend to keep the games coming out on multiple platforms. I mean, would people be making as big of a deal of this? Is this Nintendo that was doing it? I mean, Nintendo is absolutely killing the industry right now. I mean, not killing in terms of bad games or anything, but like they're killing it. They're doing amazing with the least amount of hardware in the freaking out there of the three consoles. And they're killing it, and they're killing it on exclusive software. Why should it be any different for Sony? If Sony's that confident in their software and they've made some amazing games, I'm playing them all. Then what's really the big deal? I don't think Xbox is going to be that stupid to go out and start pulling all these big games away from them when Sony has a massive install base and will continue to have it. So Xbox is about making money. They want to get bigger market share. They're suffering in 3/4 of the world where they can't even make a dent. They can't even sell 1,000 Series X's in Japan. Think about that. Yeah. They need to make some roads. Otherwise, all the money they've invested over the years, all these investments are for what? For squat. They're going to go tits up if they can't get return on investment. They want to get people into the ecosystem. That is by, of course, doing the Game Pass model and getting the streamers out there. That's makes you constant bank. I mean, anybody will tell you it's better to make, it's better for you to have $5 a day every day of the damn year than make $50 once and have a one-time payment. And for sure, Wooly has a great point on some of the things. Some of the bigger companies that spend multi-millions of dollars making these games may have a harder time seeing that return on investment. But how many indie developers have seen major explosion in exposure, more people playing their games, people buying their content? It's kind of, think of it as a free-to-play model, where Fortnite, for example, is now one of the biggest games on the planet by basically giving it to you for free, but absolutely charging you up the ass for the stupidest ass skins on the planet, and everybody has a dozen of them, maybe more. You see
I
where
have
I'm
so
going
many
with
more,
it.
Noof. I'm a real brain of a 9-year-old
A
here.
ton of them.
Yeah.
Right? Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So you see my point. Am I saying this is a perfect model?
Don't
Am
you
I saying
think that
this is a
will
perfect
become
model?
even more
No.
egregious with Game Pass, though? Don't you think that will be even more egregious, like microtransactions and the way?
No, I
mean,
don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to tread that territory. Let's certainly hope that. I won't say never, because look, we know how
gotta make the
companies
money
get
back,
greedy
bro.
real quick, right? They go from saying, "Hey, we won't put the price up for whatever," and then 6 months they jack it up again. We've seen Netflix already jack up their prices multiple times until they're getting backlash, and now they're trying to roll things back. It could happen here. I'm not saying that it won't. I certainly hope not. And I'm one of the ones. If you go back to a couple of years ago when Game Pass came out, this is what I said. I said it's dangerous to get. This is where this model gets dangerous. They get enough people in, they bait you with the freebies, they bait you in all of these, how many months for $5 or $1. And then as soon as they get mass exposure and they get everybody into the ecosystems, like, hey, you know what, we got to spend a lot of money and we're trying to make money. So here we go, guys. You can have another $5 on top of that tab. But at the end of the day, a lot of people, if you do the math, I mean, the months of Game Pass are far exceedingly easier to get into than obviously even buying 3 or 4 games. I mean, it's worked for me, and I hate to be the one to say that, but there's a lot of games that I'm playing right now that I didn't have the money to go out and buy, even if I wanted to. There's a few games that I'm playing through Game Pass right now that, I'm glad that I got them through Game Pass, because I don't think I would have wanted to spend the $80 or $100 in Canada to go buy that game when basically go, God, that game's really not that good. We don't have the luxury of rental stores anymore. This is the thing. We don't even get many demos anymore. So technically speaking, Game Pass or any of these services are kind of like live action rental stores in a sense. You get them cheap, you figure out what you like, you can invest on that if you want or whatever. But like I said, this deal, I mean, you got to think of it. It's not just the Sony side. I can see how there's bonuses. I can see how there could be downsides to it. I totally get that. Sony is going to be fine. Sony knows how to make money. They know where their bread and butter is at. They know it's in their games. They know it's in the games that people like. How many people, at least in this lobby, buy PlayStation products mostly for their game? So that's not going to change as long as Sony knows how to keep making great games and investing that money in. And of course, they're going to double down on their own services too. They're going to be fine. Sure, they're going to hit some of that marketing. They're going to have to get around that because they won't be able to market the Call of Duties of the world anymore. But they'll find other creative ways to do it. And like I said, do we think that Sony is done? Do you think they're just sitting back right now? They're probably figuring out a counter way to either, like I said, to get Square Enix or to get another investor. They still got money too. It's not like they're actually broke or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I said earlier,
So-
if Nintendo was to spend all this money and bought Activision, and they had the money to do it too, would there be still as much of a thing, or is this just because people have to hate on
you say Nintendo had the cash to buy Activision?
Nintendo certainly has
I'm
money
sorry,
to
but
buy
if
Activision.
Nintendo bought Call of Duty, everyone
Nintendo
would
doesn't have
flip.
the cash to buy Activision.
No, Nintendo probably has. I thought they said like 11 billion or something like that. Is that? I mean, what do they have?
Yeah, we also got to remember something too. Like a lot of people talk about
In
Xbox
cash, I
being
think
in
they
last
said.
place. They're last place in console sales, but they're actually ahead in revenue generation above Nintendo.
Yeah, they're doing great. Everybody's
like
doing great.
Xbox is number 2 in revenue generation behind Sony in the console
Just
space.
terrible profit margins.
Like people are like, oh well, the Xbox is last place. Yes, in console sales, but in terms of revenue, they're number 2. I mean,
Nintendo's Nintendo's market cap is 8.3 billion. The chance of them being able to buy Activision is 0.
I'm just thinking of Mario cocking back an M16 going, it's me, Mario. And it's just,
Only if-
that'd be great.
and that's just getting me.
Let's not conflate Microsoft with Xbox either. I mean, Xbox are the least popular console because Xbox is a product and it's not delivered the quality for the masses that is at parity with, say, the quality that PlayStation as a product provides. But that's not the same as Microsoft. They're not in last place. They're like the third or second most richest company on the planet. They have
They're the second
more
second most
coverage.
value. Yeah.
They own
world.
a higher percentage of the market in terms of property, intellectual property. They have a huge, massive hand in the cloud infrastructure, in the PC space. I mean, they have every advantage going for them to compete. The only reason why they don't compete with Sony at a third-party investment level, and I see people coming with this argument out with Wooly, you know, why would Microsoft invest huge money in third-party deals when the games won't make enough money through sales on Xbox because Xbox is the least popular console and there's not enough of a player base to support those investments? I'm thinking, wait, are you saying why doesn't Xbox compete at a loss that builds the industry and over time builds up a consumer base through quality games, but they're happy to take a loss and spend 70 billion, even more, almost 90 billion in acquisitions in 2 years and compete with a loss leading model that puts content day one onto a subscription service and make third-party deals for that subscription service of games that they haven't helped create or funded the development of? Like, what's more of a loss here? What's more of a loss leading model? Like Microsoft actually investing in exclusives, third-party exclusives, and putting those games onto maybe PC and Xbox to sell, and maybe putting them on Game Pass 6 months down the line. Would that be a bigger loss than what they're currently doing? Hell no, it wouldn't. But they just choose not to because they want Game Pass to lock people in and for them to stay subbed as many people as possible, and to do that, the buy. That is the facts. That is what people are just not accepting, but that is what they are doing, and that is why they have spent 90 billion almost on intellectual property over the space of barely even 2 years. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, I have a couple super chats here that really pertain to this, and then I want to hear Mr. Babbitt. I really want to hear what Worry's got to say on that as well. Shout out to Buck. He says, Lena Khan, head of the most powerful regulator in the world, failed to extract a single concession to benefit U.S. consumers when Microsoft was desperate. What the hell? So shout out to Buck. Face23 making a good point. He says, it's looking like Microsoft will acquire ABK. So my question is, what is stopping them from buying more publishers like EA and 2K? I'm only saying that's literally the next topic. So we will talk about that in a second. Face, thank you so much for the super chat. Leah, 52-year-old gamer in the UK. I don't mention names on the show. I know what you're saying. He says here, but he says a lot of people are carrying on like they won the lottery on Twitter. Watch COD go to hell in the coming years. I don't think it'll go to hell, but the jury's out. We'll see what happens. That guy Smitty says, hit the like button. Great combos going on, guys. You know, people in the chat, you guys are like, oh, I don't like the ponies and the bots and the bots and the ponies. It's CrossFire. No one came here to light a candle. Okay, so this is what we do on the show. Shout out to that guy Smitty. Magnum Gaming says, look at the flash sales in theaters. Once an IP goes in a service, people view it as fodder and can't recover back from that mindset. Shout out to Magnum Visuals. Jeff B. Gaming, this is equivalent to the Yankees buying an all-star team with a horrible manager. It won't get fixed long-term with as management goes. That's something else we'll talk about, is a little bit about how management has kind of stepped up or not stepped up, Jeff. We'll talk about that in a minute. Thanks for the super chat. The great Jimmy Harrison says, shout out to Wooly. Death Stranding was amazing. Wooly was on this show, I believe, when he talked to you about that. And Death Stranding is still one of the, I don't want to say underrated because I think it's sold fine, but I think more people should play it. So shout out to the great Jimmy Harrison. And Button Basher, who was supposed to join us tonight, the great Button Basher, he goes, couldn't make it tonight. We are held up here on most recent build for Forza. If you guys don't know, the great Button Basher works over at Turn 10. He says, my bad, bro, but I'm listening while working. Basher, great to have you listening, buddy, and thanks for doing the work that you're doing and making games great. So bad bit. I want to hear your take on it, and you always have such a positive spin. It's great. If anybody's going to be Mr. Kumbaya, it is going to be the great Mr. Bad Bit. Bad Bit, what do you think about this? You've heard BRAP, you've heard Merc, you've heard Noof. What do you think?
We're all gonna die.
That was not Kumbaya.
I mean, it's inevitable.
No, yeah, it's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
It's every day we're just spinning our tires. No, listen, I think everybody's made terrific points. I've always been on the mindset that I don't like consolidation. I always just point to look at, cable as one of the great evils. Look at healthcare in this country in terms of they literally have charted out territories of hey, we won't compete with you here if you don't compete with us there, kind of handshake deals. And that doesn't help the consumers out in the long run. And I don't think we're there yet here when it comes to video games. And maybe that comes from, I'm not a big consumer of Activision stuff, but when I think about me as a PlayStation gamer of what I'm looking at it selfishly because I'm a consumer, goddammit. When I'm looking at what am I actually losing? I'm not really losing anything. I still get to play Call of Duty on PlayStation. I still get to play Overwatch on PlayStation. I still get to play Diablo on PlayStation. The things that I'm missing out on are games that are new IP. And what new IP has Activision actually making outside of I don't know, that survival Blizzard game. We don't even know what that thing is. It's a germ at this point.
Right.
So when I take a look at things that we're actually losing here, I don't think we're losing much. So for me, it's on one side of the coin, I don't like the consolidation. I don't like that the industry is getting smaller and smaller. But I also do believe in, in capitalism. This is usually what ends up happening. Companies buy each other, the talent leave, they go out there, create their own studios. You see other publishers come up. Look at Focus Home Interactive, right? Who the hell were they 10 plus years ago? Now they're a major player in the field, right? So when I take a look at even someone like CD Projekt Red, where were they, I don't know, 15 plus years ago? And now we put them up on, one of the greatest developers of all time next to people like Bethesda. So, it's kind of one person leaves the table, the next one enters it. So I don't think we're in this doomsday apocalyptic thing that we're
Hey, Mr. Babbitt, I'm sorry to interrupt. To your point, no, I'm sorry. I want to say something before I forget this, but I've heard this argument by many people that, you take ABK off the table, another developer will come in. That's not necessarily true. I mean, there's a vacuum that isn't necessarily filled right away from this acquisition of a major publisher who's part of the top 7 publishers who contribute 70% of the revenue to the gaming industry.
And I agree with that. I'm sorry, I'll let you finish your point.
And I say this because I've seen people, say, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Someone will step in. Well, no, that's not how that works. And even when they do step in, what happens? A developer steps in, like Respawn. What happened to Respawn? They got bought by EA. I mean, so it's not a, and I've seen people say, oh, consolidation, don't worry about it because someone else will. You've got all these indies, and no, I mean, those indies and those new studios. Even the AAA studio that was started by the founders of
I would say just to argue that point, I would say there's a lot more choice when it comes to multiplayer games 10 years ago than they are today, right? Who would have guessed Epic Games would be as huge as they are right now? Who would not look at it soccer cars, right? And I know that's not one-to-one with Call of Duty, especially with soccer cars, but the variety that you get to choose from as a gamer has just amplified. So to me, I'm not singing the doomsday thing. I'm not a doomsday watcher. In fact, I think Sony's going to be,
and that's fair. But again, how many of those games are financially successful? Right? Not many. I mean, I get there's choice, and what I caution people when we talk about Call of Duty and Microsoft peanut butter and Call of Duty around multiple platforms cheaply. Think about that for a second. Microsoft cheaply being able to do things, leverage its adjacencies, put games via cloud, or leverage their own internal infrastructure to do things that EA can't do with their multiplayer games. I mean, those things start coming into play a little bit. So I caution people with that when they say, go ahead.
Yeah, I would definitely listen to the Season Gaming interview with one of the developers over at Respawn that kind of go into what you're saying a bit. Because you're right. Listen, there's a lot of games that come out every single day. They're not financially successful, or there's like awesome, multiplayer games that aren't around forever, and that's a big bummer. But I would still look at the net positive that is the choice that is surrounding us right now. So, as someone who is diametrically opposed to this deal, I don't like the consolidation. As someone who has been at day one for the FTC, actually going out there and asking questions of, is this ethical or not, right? Does this hurt competition or not? Does it lessen it to a degree that is dangerous? I am never opposed to any of that, no matter what industry it's in. It's never a waste of taxpayer dollars just to ask the question of what ifs, just so we don't get those, Facebook, Instagrams, or your phone monopolies or cable monopolies right now. And I am also the one that's fearful when we come to streaming and how bonuses get laid out for developers who are working on those games. That's really my bigger things. I'm also hearing really good success stories about Game Pass. So as we poo-poo it, there's as someone who's worked inside the industry and have heard plenty of positive things about it, from just hearing developers right now. Everspace 2 dev said the reason why there's a good PC port, the PS5 port, is because of Game Pass, and that's my good friend Luke Lord doing that interview. It's not the devil. The only thing that I always get concerned with when it comes to subscription services like these is, what is the ROI, which we're going to be talking about in a sec. So I'll just say it right here, right now. That's the thing that scares me, because listen, Game Pass, it's a great service. Great, awesome value there. 30 million subs, and that's nothing to scoff at. But now you own Call of Duty, and that's 30 million subs with things like Bethesda. That's things with Fallout. That's things with Elder Scrolls and Starfield. 30 million. So the ROI, what is the return on investment? What is a success in Microsoft's eyes? Because the scary thing is what Microsoft admits in the court is they're not hitting those targets that they want them to hit. And so that's my only fear. It's not the fact that oh no, I'm still have to pay $70. I don't give a shit. My thing is what happens if they consistently still don't hit those ROIs, and then all of a sudden we have this weird breakup? To me, it's I very much see a future where Activision's independent, put an asterisk-ish on it, and Microsoft actually gets to see what a successful live service game looks like with Call of Duty, akin to what Bungie's doing over there at Sony. So again, am I against it? Yes. Is this the end of the world? Are we dying here, folks? Absolutely not. Flint, Michigan still don't got drinking water. This is fine.
Yeah, so let me, I just, not to take the microphone away from everyone, we are getting some pretty heavy storms here where I live. If there is a power outage, I apologize, guys. Believe me, this is going to be one of my favorite shows in recent weeks. But I want to say this much. If the power goes out, please. I apologize, and I don't want anyone to be alarmed, but that would be the reason. That being said,
he doesn't want us to talk.
Right, yeah, exactly, right? Shout out to Stick Figure. He says this acquisition means Xbox is here to stay. I know where you're coming from because of all the doom and gloom that we saw for the past 5 months, especially the past 5 months with Phil going on that XCast show. It seemed like the sky was falling on Xbox. So I understand where Stick Figure is coming from, but I think Xbox was okay even if this deal didn't go through. They would have got somebody else. Forget Me Not. Exactly, they have ZeniMax, which is an outstanding publisher. Forget Me Not says if Microsoft keeps buying publishers, and they will, no one can BS their way through explaining how this is good for gaming. I think Mr. Badbit did a decent job of putting.
And I will say again, Activision's my. This is okay. Now you stop. This is enough. At this point, this is the line in the sand for me.
What's the incentive to stop when you can get this deal through?
I mean, operation costs. ROI.
Microsoft's already said in order for this deal to work, it needs to be profitable right away. They've ran the numbers, and presumably speaking, one of the reasons why they're not going to pull it from PlayStation right away is because they need PlayStation to make it work financially. Yeah. So it will presumably work based on Microsoft's own math and running their numbers. It will work. So What's you got to remember something. Microsoft's also has $1 trillion market cap.
Sure.
I mean, what at this point, like if EA says Microsoft, we want you to buy us, Microsoft's not going to say no. They just passed the largest deal in gaming.
Yeah.
Well, I think no one's gonna like EA, Ubisoft, 2K. No one's gonna argue a buyout for them, because like you get those golden parachutes. That sounds great. But we're also dealing in what ifs, right? So like, what if Microsoft buys another publisher? I'll be fucking upset. But I'm not working there right now. I'm working in the here and now.
My point is that these, historically speaking, you look at previous mergers, acquisitions in other industries. There's always been a tipping point where one particular merger acquisition was the tipping point to mass consolidation in that specific industry. We've seen this in entertainment. We've seen this in oil and gas. I saw Noof post about gas or something earlier. Noof, the reason why you pay high gas is because there's less suppliers in the market. I mean, those things happen due to a specific merger that took place that kind of tipped the cap of, well, wait a minute.
Anything goes now.
Yeah, anything goes.
We're at an inflection point, and guys, it's scary. I'm not here to argue it. Yeah,
I would caution people. I mean, we've seen this in healthcare in the U.S. We've seen this in pharmaceuticals. We've seen, in other industries here in the U.S. I mean, people out here championing a win. I'm like, be careful what you champion, because it may come back to bite you the ass later on. And that's all I'm saying. Like, let's just be very careful. Like, why was it Disney didn't stop? But Disney didn't stop. That's a concern. I mean, Disney kept going. I mean,
Disney did it very slowly, right? Like you saw it in the 90s, then you saw it in the early 2000s with something small like Pixar, then you saw it in Marvel, and then you saw it something bigger with Star Wars. Again, I'm not arguing that this isn't like a scary thing or I'm championing it. I'm not here to go, all right, Sony, now you go buy Take-Two and pat Jim Ryan on the back.
I don't think Sony would buy Take-Two because they probably can't afford to. But my concern is that we're going to have this war on content where now you have Sony and maybe other publishers. Because think about it, how do we compete with Game? This is the other thing with Game Pass. Again, I'm not saying Game Pass is all terrible. I mean, I think you brought up some great points, Mr. Babbitt, because I've heard from smaller developers have said that Game Pass has been good for them. I've also heard from other developers say Game Pass is not good for them. Right. I think it just depends on the developer, right? It's probably more of a 50-50 thing depending on your situation as developer or publisher. But I do think that potentially when you start adding and Microsoft starts acquiring more studios or starts, this is the other thing too with Game Pass. And again, I'm not trying to say Game Pass, tremendous value proposition. There could be some potential downsides to Game Pass where you start talking about the devaluation of software, where people are starting to not want to pay for games, right? I heard Doof say,
changing market behavior.
Yeah, changing market behavior. I got a chance to play all these games. There's the devaluation of software. That's going to impact quality down the road. And it also may mean that now publishers, when they release, and this is a problem Nintendo faced from third-party publishers, when third-party publishers were often reluctant to release games on the Nintendo Switch because they were competing with Nintendo's first party in terms of sales.
Yeah, you got to make great games. Look at the Outriders, the Outriders situation, right? Spent a lot of money to get that game into Game Pass and stuff, but look, let's face the facts. That game wasn't that great anyway, and people are like, "Well, you didn't buy it. Nobody would buy it at first." Like, no, it's just because people sometimes you just know, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, some games are just bad. And you take this Exo Primal game. You think that game right now, that anybody would actually go out and pay like $90 for that game full price? I mean, come on. Like, some games are just bad, and that's where they belong in places like Game Pass. I'm glad
Microsoft suckers
to save our wallets from some of the trash that we got out there.
Yeah, but
I mean, heck, if I had to pay $90 for Redfall, I probably would have went back and took the disc and wiped my ass with it by now.
There's enough resources. There's enough resources and information.
That's very uncomfortable thought.
I do want to add.
There's enough resources and information out there to determine whether or not, as a consumer, Redfall might be,
And I think we're in a thing with Game Pass right now where, like, if you're an indie dev, chances are you might like it because it's gonna help you. It's gonna help you out when it comes to worrying about your next game or worrying about the game right now you're currently making. But just like take a look at it. Just take a look at it with the PS4 generation. Indies loved PlayStation in the beginning. Now we are hearing some very critical thoughts on that platform and how PlayStation sort of moved away from indies, and now the wanting them to come back into their court. So to me, it's like, yeah, we're kind of in like this nice, maybe still a honeymoon period with Game Pass,
Yeah, but
and maybe and maybe with this that changes where it's like, now we don't need to get what is it, Dave the Diver, because we got Call of Duty, we got Crash, and we could just now focus on our output and not actually really include many other folks in there.
Yeah, but my point was what kind of Wooly was saying, change in market behavior, where now it's like, and you see it now, you see the conversation on Twitter. I know Twitter's a very small sample size, but you see it where people are like, oh, it's not coming to Game Pass. Oh, I'm not gonna buy it, or I'm gonna wait for it to come to Game Pass. If those things start gaining momentum potentially, I mean, my point is that those are things that those are things of contention that a third party publisher they have to deal with and consider when, hey, do I want to release my third-party game on a platform where I have to compete with Game Pass, where the perception is I'm getting all this content for free? If my game's $70 and the lower and the barrier of entry is $15 a month, I have to compete against that as a publisher. Is it worth my time and resources, which costs money when you think about porting games over to another platform? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Maybe, maybe not. And that's my point. I mean, I think those are potentially.
Sure.
I think potential downfalls. Again, I'm not, and again, I know people are like, oh, you just hate Game Pass. No, I'm not saying, but I'm saying is it's not all sunshine and roses.
Just jumping off.
You have to look at the entire, thing here, the entire, the big picture.
Just bouncing off your point, BRAP. Yeah. I think it's telling that a lot of people, when they try and defend this consolidation, they say, oh, let's Sony buy Square. Why did he specifically mention Square? Because it has minimal impact on Xbox gamers and the status quo. But if you suggest to them, well, what if Sony were to buy Capcom or make an exclusionary partnership with Take-Two? Like, that's a different ball game, and they're not happy to discuss that possibility because it will have a direct negative impact on Xbox gamers. And that's the thing. Like, it's all well and good. Microsoft can buy whoever the hell they want, but the moment games on Xbox are threatened to be taken away, like that they don't like that. So it's kind of like a pot meat kettle scenario and situation. And as for like,
well, it's because it hurts their box, right? Like when we talk about like Twitter, I always immediately go to fanboys. And that's why, like, I've seen myself spend less and less time on the platform. Is like, people see them wave their flag around. It's like, well, people don't want that because it hurts them, right? Or it may hurt my team, or it may hurt the image that I present.
But long term, brother, like, they're not seeing the bigger picture. Like, the reason why Exoprimal is on Game Pass day one is because Capcom knew it would review terribly, and
they knew there was.
And was a live service game, right? So right now, the Game Pass's lack of popularity, relatively speaking, it not having 70 million gamers right now, or completely dominating the market, because they've not yet acquired all the major IP going, even though they clearly want to and are trying to. Right now, the good games are still selling, but there's going to be a point where gamers don't give two shits about Exoprimal, but they do care about, say, Call of Duty being on Game Pass day one. So why would I buy Call of Duty on my PS5? And as Game Pass grows and grows and grows and becomes more prolific, because Microsoft are just pouring a shit ton of losses into this service and just making a huge loss and not making any profit, and trying to buy all the IP that they can to lock into this service to detract customers away from other platforms, there is going to be a tipping point where major IP is then on that service, because Microsoft have the leverage over developers, because they have the numbers. They have the leverage over developers. They can get the most prolific IP and content on a service, and then gamers are going to detract away from other platforms, because
I think most of those big AAA. I think most of those big AAA developers, like your Outriders and your Exoprimals, most of them, like, when you talk about the big AAA games that land on Game Pass, they aren't your, Resident Evils. They're
That's
your
my point. One day it will be.
It's your Exoprimals.
If this keeps growing, and
if
that's lost leading
Microsoft
like that.
becomes the market leader, sure, But I think a lot of them see, like, Capcom would be like, yeah, you have to give me a shit ton of money because I know my projections say that, you know, Resident Evil 4 is going to sell a boatload on day one. So you really have to make this worth my while. And while other games like Exo Primal.
It won't sell though if we get to the point where gamers are seeing big games like Resident Evil going on to Game Pass day one, and they're going to eventually reach a point where they're like, I'm fed up of publishers using Game Pass as a monetary boon whilst relying on us players on other platforms to make them the actual profit. And it's going to get to that point, and that's going to literally destroy other platforms. Like the whole service stinks because it leaves third party high and dry, and it only builds what's in that small ecosystem. Whereas Sony, they put it this way, Sony make 23 billion a year in revenue. Mm-hmm. They only make barely 2 billion profit or operating profit because all of that money goes back in, not only into themselves, but into the industry.
Right.
How many studios have they helped form in the last 5 years? Kojima Productions, freaking Firewalk, Firesprite, Haven. Like, how much has Sony built up and contributed to the industry so far? Massive sales achievements on third-party games. Like, Sony are a contributor. They won't be a contributor if they're being shrunk by this loss-leading model, this Trojan that's growing and growing and growing and growing because they've got an absolute mega conglomerate behind it. Yeah, pushing all the money they need into it.
And, you know, it's funny, Willie, just to add on to that game, shout out to Game Down Sites. Big fan of Game Down Sites. Big time gamer, by the way. Been with the channel for a long time, too. Shout out to Game. But he says, you know, it'll force Sony to make their own Game Pass. They're not going to. It doesn't. Microsoft. We've had so many people on the channel, in the business, on this channel, on this show, say Microsoft can afford to do this, not only with the ABK deal, but just Game Pass in general, and have it be a lost leader because they can afford to have that loss of money. Sony, Nintendo cannot afford to do what Game Pass takes to thrive. That's years upon years of not making the money that they would need. That's why Sony and Nintendo need that $70 price tag. That's why you saw the new Zelda at $70, right?
Mooch, Kotick basically confirmed that. He's like, it just doesn't make financial sense. I mean, you think about the time, the resources, the budget to make Call of Duty. You heard
they can't
Strauss
do that.
Zelnick has talked about this too. The multi-subscription game services don't make sense for our games day and date. You can think about the big budgets. I mean, like, I think it was Phil Spencer, Matt Booty's like, we're not going to make $200 million AAA games. Microsoft's not doing that anymore. They're trying to, you know, spend the least amount of money and buy, you know, these publishers to feed Game Pass without spending a lot of money in terms of development, in terms of AAA development, and that's fair. I mean, they have every right to do that, but for people to sit there and say, oh, well, Sony can do it, no, it doesn't make financial sense based on their business model. The other thing I want to mention too, real quick, which I'm sorry, I don't mean to hijack the show here, but you know, Microsoft, even before this deal will close now, but I do believe it still has to go in front of the. I could be wrong, but my understanding, and I have to double check, I could be wrong here. I'm just saying that because I know people are like, oh, BRAP, you know. I believe that the August 2nd hearing in front of the FTC's administrative law judge is still pending. I think Lena Khan confirmed that in front of the House Judiciary Committee yesterday when she said she couldn't comment because it was still under their administrative adjudication. But Microsoft's already, someone on the panel said, you know, I don't know who it was, that maybe Call of Duty has some autonomy here. They do to an extent, but they don't. I mean, Microsoft, even before this deal is closing, they're already calling shots on where Call of Duty is going to be without input from Activision. I mean, they're saying it's going to be on cloud. They're saying it's going to be on Nintendo. You know, Activision themselves really haven't necessarily agreed to that. Microsoft has. Right. So, you know, they're ready, even before this acquisition is closing, making decisions on behalf of Activision in terms of where Call of Duty is going to be and so forth. And that's the other thing, too. You think about development. Now you have to develop a game for Nintendo. You have to develop a game for cloud. I mean, that's now you're adding additional time, resources, stress to development teams. So
it's kind of like when we're like, oh, there's so many cool things, right? It's like so many cool possibilities. Like we could free Toy for Bob, we could free Raven, we could free all these studios from the Call of Duty development. I'm like, don't think that's how that's gonna work. Like, I don't think all of a sudden Vicarious Visions is gonna get its identity back and it's gonna be
absolutely
doing the cool stuff.
That's my
Right.
point, Mr. Babbitt.
You know, there's gonna be a very long biopsy of Activision to see how this thing, the engine that is Call of Duty, runs. Right.
I don't even think
Before
they
you can
know.
even see them.
I don't think they know. 'Cause this
know
was
either.
rushed. They
Yeah,
just want to.
You know what's
own them.
interesting about Call of Duty is is everyone aware of where
Did you say
the
duty or
largest
duty?
Yeah, duty.
Sounds like it's duty. Is that
Hey,
slander
say-
against Mark? What's going on here, man?
No,
You're a
no,
PC
no,
gamer, man. Go slander call
I
him.
am. I mean, but listen, COD. Let's call it COD. Do we know where the biggest 2-player bases are for COD? I'll give you a hint. It's not on
And
console.
mobile. Well, hang
Mobile
on.
and PC. Console is third.
Okay.
So every
yeah.
time I
Good
hear
point,
Call
Mark.
of Duty being used as a, oh,
Wait a
you know,
minute.
if it's
Mobile-
coming, if it's not coming,
Mobile less made money than PlayStation. Mobile made Call of Duty less revenue than PlayStation alone.
they have the
They made them
highest
1
player
billion.
base on Call of
But
Duty.
nevertheless, PlayStation made Activision Blizzard 1.6 billion revenue. Mobile only made them 1 billion, right? And the rest, was I think 800 million split between PC and Xbox. So you can imagine Xbox made them barely anything.
Probably the least. Probably the least.
But Xbox made them barely anything, and
I mean,
PC made
and you
them
get to
just under
see
30 million.
their market position in that core email where they're like,
Yeah.
we'll trade Call of Duty away from you if you don't give us 80-20. Like, just
Listen,
simple as that.
the likelihood of Call of Duty being pulled off any platform is zero.
It's
I
zero.
just don't see the deal going
It's not
through.
gonna
Let's
happen.
say it goes through. Is
Let's
everybody
just
going to be able
remember,
to buy
though-
COD on whatever your platform is? Of course it is. You know what I mean? That's obvious.
Let's just remember though that those 10-year deals were all upfront because those services already had Call of Duty on them, and all Microsoft wanted to be was the replacement foot that holds the door open. Because
I agree.
and ABK as a third-party publisher
Mm.
has the incentive to make as many deals as possible with as many platforms as possible. Microsoft
agree.
as a platform holder, not a third-party publisher, has the exact opposite. They have the incentive to exclude other platforms and make as many deals with other publishers as possible. So their incentive is a complete counter to what ABK's was prior to acquisition. And so
I mean, I'd argue just
are we
simply on the
really-
fact of like Minecraft, right? Like, they haven't pulled Minecraft from PlayStation. If I believe PlayStation's their most profitable on the console side. So like, yeah, go for it.
Minecraft is dominant on the mobile market, not the console market. And I would argue that pulling a game that was already released would probably be more of a PR disaster than it's worth, right? So like I don't see Minecraft as in any way like for me it's a false.
But even like
equivalency.
their future games of Minecraft, let's take a look at Dungeons and Legends. They're on PlayStation 2.
Mm-hmm. But the point is, like Colt Eastwood in the chat, he's saying Xbox is pushing COD to more devices and now to Nintendo. The point is, ABK could do the same. Those platforms could reach out to them.
It also
they
failed.
Were a third-party platform. They were a third-party publisher, not a platform holder. And all this does, Colt, is give Microsoft the ability to shut that door when these little non-competitive services grow too big for their boots. And when they become competitive, right now they're not competitive. They're too small to be competitive. So they're fine making these deals with them. But once they get to a point where they're bigger, Microsoft can just take COD away. And this is what people just aren't grasping. Is like, how can you think that a platform holder holding the door to huge prolific IP is better than a third-party publisher that's not a platform holder? It's a silly, disingenuous argument to make, and it makes no freaking sense.
I want to get.
Yeah, I think I made it like, again, respectfully. I think I made it with Minecraft. Again, they haven't pulled Minecraft away or the future iterations of those games from that platform. I think franchise matters to them.
It's the exception to the rule, bro. Minecraft. It's the exception to the rule. Look at ZeniMax. ZeniMax had sale projections for Starfield on PS5. They had sales projections for Indiana Jones on PS5. So they were planning to make that game for
But
PS5.
I would say that Jim Ryan doesn't even view that as anti-competitive.
I don't give two shits what Jim Ryan thinks. The point is that the point is that Microsoft have incentive to exclude other platforms as a platform holder. That's the argument I'm making. They do, and Minecraft is the exception to the rule here. Like they've fully
What
made
about
clear
Fallout
that
76?
Well, that's a live service game that's already on PlayStation with parity clauses probably in place. Live service games have parity clauses that go from 7 years to 14 years. Like, the parity clauses exist. It would be an extortionate fine if Microsoft were to break those clauses. It would be illegal. So I don't think like pre-existing games that were already on PlayStation, especially live service games, is kind of an argument to make to defend the fact that Microsoft.
I would say that like Call of Duty is a
the
live
next one
service
ain't.
game.
Warzone 3 ain't, or whatever it's going to be. Freaking Modern Warfare 3. It's a separate game. It's a completely
Is
different.
Destiny 3 going to be on Xbox? Just
Yeah,
curious.
it will be because Bungie is remaining independent and multi-platform
that's
indefinitely.
that's a part
It's
of
the
their.
same reason why
that's-
Marathon is on Xbox.
Are they owned?
that's-
Are they owned by Sony?
No,
Yeah,
they are. Well, they are, but it's kind of like a situation. And I'm using this roughly. It's similar, like what the situation with Microsoft, the Bethesda, but actually part of the contract terms of that acquisition with Bungie is that they remain multi-plat. They all their games will still be moved multi-plat. That was actually a point of contention for Bungie to be acquired from.
Yeah, and I think when it
by
came down
Sony
to
and Xbox
Fallout's-
actually.
sorry.
I'm sorry. When Phil wanted to acquire Bungie, he wanted to make them totally exclusive. Bungie's like, no, we're not doing that. And so it is in contract that they will remain multi-plat. Bungie.
I mean,
And
my
I
argument
think-
is that I'm sorry. Go ahead, Batman.
No,
My bad.
you do. You go for it, man. I've been talking a lot.
They go on to court and they have said, all right, Call of Duty's going to remain on all these platforms, for the next 10 years, which is really the foreseeable future, right? For a long time. And I'm not saying, Wooly, that you're wrong, that, once the service grows, that there could be a chance that they pull the game off of PlayStation. Sure. But I mean, listen, I believe in free market. I believe in free market creates innovation. I mean, listen, Sony at one point was the small player in the market. They innovated, they created IPs, and they
Innovation
became
doesn't
great.
happen when you offer things cheaply, but that's another conversation. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bert. Go ahead,
I
man.
mean, you're right, Brap. But let's say me and you, we're trying to start a business, but you were born with a silver spoon. You have the advantage, right?
Yeah,
That's
I had
not
more
fair.
fun than you.
That's not fair either. So that's the reason why I'm saying,
But brother,
get it.
ZeniMax. Let's not forget they bought ZeniMax. They got that silver. They bought that silver spoon, and
I
they
get
could
it,
still
but
lose
you're
money
missing the
by
point.
making
You're
third-party
missing the point.
partnerships.
I don't necessarily agree with the consolidation. I just don't have a problem with the deal because
Right.
hey, listen, they got the checkbook. They can buy it. Hey man, cool. Sony's gonna have to do something to respond. And who knows? Maybe they come out with a shooter that's gonna be better than Call of Duty.
I mean, we kind of saw like what is it like the day after you're seeing Sony pour even more money into their
$2 billion,
gaming R&D.
something like that.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say.
Something
If you
like
guys,
that.
I mean,
if
I-
you guys,
But
so
I
wait,
take
so-
a look at like Fallout 76, like those internal emails, they kind of laid out like Microsoft's blueprints. Like if it's single player, chances are we want it for ourselves. If it's a multiplayer game that we're acquiring,
Of course.
it needs to justify that 11 plus million consumers to kind of sustain itself. And so again, I don't see the realistic reality of a day anytime soon where Call of Duty is pulled from honestly any ecosystem. I think it is just going to be added. And again, this is coming from a guy, I don't like the deal. I can't reiterate it enough. I don't like it. But that's just a feeling. And president has shown that the deal's going through.
Right.
And
Right.
it looks like right now.
So
it will go through.
you guys touched on this. Let me just, I have a couple of super chats. I do want to kind of we're not going to change the subject, but we're just going to move it slightly over because it does open another question here. Shout out to, I believe it's Forget Me Not here. I hope I'm saying it wrong. Pardon me, Alphonso Carter, the great Alphonso Carter. He says Microsoft is going to dominate the cloud space, and nobody else will be able to make a cloud game without Microsoft's permission. That was the CMA went through that approach, and that's where they went through and did their block. I was shocked to see that the FTC didn't kind of stand parallel with CMA and go down the cloud approach where they more attacked through the console. And I think that's where they kind of got lost in translation. Forget Me Not is back. He says, all I'm hearing is a lot of downplaying how bad the ramifications of this deal will be 5 to 10 years down the line. Well, forget me not. Let's play the other side of the coin, right? So you're hearing that, right? And that's fine. I understand that I don't think that's all you're hearing. Mr. Babbitt's he's clear on his point on how he feels about the deal, but he's been extremely positive in what could come from it. But you got to remember something at the same time here, forget me not. You're also listening to other shows and yourself, and you're saying the next 5 to 10 years are going to be nothing but glorious and bring the best of the best out of gaming from moves like this. So I'll sit here and meet you halfway, forget me not. I'll say that we're not entirely right, or people who think that it's a bad deal are not right. But if you're sitting there pom-pomming it, we also don't know if this is going to be good for us gamers. Let's not worry about how good it is for Microsoft. Let's worry about how good it is for us, the people buying the games, the people buying the services, the people enjoying the games moving forward. So forget me not. I hope that kind of puts things into perspective. I do want to kind of hop a little bit more onto the 2.1.
Also, Mooch, I'm sorry to interrupt real fast.
Go ahead.
There are thunderstorms in my area too, so
No, I hear you. Yeah, it seems to be that time of season though, Mr. Babbitt.
Yeah.
But
scared.
I'm scared. Get onto the desk. All right, so here's the thing, real quick: the 2.1 billion on research and development. Worry, I want to ask you about this first and foremost. Sony's going to be spending a lot. Now, I'll actually read the entire quote here. Sony will spend 2.1 billion on research and development for its game segment for the fiscal year ending March 2024. Worry, you've really said a few things to me behind the scenes about, this was the same thing that, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, I don't mean to, you can correct me. But the concern when Microsoft has Windows, the number one operating system on computers, period, whether it be business or not, Apple's iOS and others are a far, far, far second. So that's fine and dandy, but what do you think when you hear about Sony putting the 2.1 billion into the research of its game segment? Do you think that that's something is that necessarily them buying teams, or is that them expanding current teams, or looking into different types of games and genres that we're not even used to playing or haven't seen yet?
I hate to take it back to that last topic, but I just want to touch on something really quick.
Go ahead.
So I heard somebody say that Microsoft has the incentive to not put things on other platforms. Well, so does Sony and so does Nintendo. And the effects of consolidation can be felt without buying a single thing. You go back to the 80s, Nintendo had a 92% market share. And what they said to every third party was, if you want to make a game for Nintendo's platform, and of course, you would want to make a game for the platform because they've got the majority of the market, you can only make that game for Nintendo's platform.
I agree. I said that's because they're a platform.
Hold on, let me finish before you go off. Okay. They didn't have to buy anybody, but essentially what they did is they bought mindshare. So year after year after year, consumers don't know what a first party is. They don't know what a second party is. They don't know what a third party is. They know Final Fantasy PlayStation. They know Devil May Cry PlayStation. They know Resident Evil PlayStation. They know Metal Gear Solid PlayStation. You can buy mindshare as opposed to buying studios and consolidate that way. And that's exactly what Nintendo did that led to Sony having to break away and make deals to get into the industry with the PlayStation 1. That's exactly what happened all the way up to this point. I'm not saying Microsoft buying studios isn't good. I don't agree with it. But if you look at it just from the base of what's happening, they're essentially buying mindshare that's existed throughout this industry for years. Some of that mindshare, by the way, and this is why Sony's upset, some of that mindshare is PlayStation mindshare.
Yeah.
And they don't like that. Some of that mindshare used to be Nintendo mindshare, but Nintendo doesn't care. So the sentiment that, well, they're going to put stuff only on their platform and they're going to take things away. Yeah, that happened years ago. Nintendo did that to Sony. Sony did that to Microsoft and Sega. So buying things, yes, I get it. You're buying things, you're going to own them, but you're buying mindshare. That's what you're doing. And that's exactly what third-party deals for years do. That's exactly what second-party deals for years do. And yes, that content eventually can come to other platforms, and that's the argument. Well, we don't own it. It can go other places, or maybe we have a relationship with this third party. Maybe they just like us better. Maybe our platform just suits them better. That's fine. But the net result is that you're taking mindshare from somebody else. You're hoarding it to make your brand stronger. That's exactly what Game Pass is doing. When it comes to services, they're hoarding content essentially to make sure that any other service that comes along simply
compared to it.
Because everybody will think about these games now in Game Pass. So I don't have this sort of like, this disconnect between what happened in the early 80s with Nintendo and then what they did essentially to try and keep Sony out of the market. What Sony did essentially by shopping around to get third-party deals and create mindshare. Look, nobody thinks of, when you think of Resident Evil, you think PlayStation. When you think of Final Fantasy, you think PlayStation. The idea that if they buy Square Enix, it's not going to hurt Xbox. The reason it's not hurting Xbox is because it already did for years.
Yeah.
There's no association. There's no brand association with certain games.
And that's the thing that they're trying to change in terms of like Persona.
Buying that mindshare now, which I don't agree with, but it happened in the 80s. You can have consolidation and the effects of it without buying a thing. Nintendo was a master at it. Sony became incredibly good at it. The difference is Sony bought that mindshare, and while they bought themselves time to build up a first party. So while they were relying on that third party and all of these consumers to buy all of these third-party games that essentially were PlayStation games because nobody knew, they built up a first party that was stellar. That's something Microsoft didn't do, and that's on them. But the sentiment of what's happening when it comes to purchasing this stuff goes all the way back to the early 80s with Nintendo, and it's the same sentiment. Nobody is doing anything noble for the other company. So I don't get on board with the whole, well, Microsoft, they're doing this stuff and it's really, really, but yeah, it's terrible. But guess what? It happened already. The only difference is, so Nintendo was smart enough not to spend $69 billion. They just had the number one system out there, which gave them essentially the advantage to tell the industry what it had to do. That's why when Sony introduced PlayStation 1, they had to go around to every third party and essentially beg to get games on the PlayStation and make these deals. And they were smart enough to take that time and build out that mindshare behind the scenes to build up a stellar first party, which is something Microsoft didn't do. That's where I think a lot of this disdain for what Microsoft is doing comes from. I'm not saying they can create great games in the future, because look at Redfall. The first game coming out under Game Pass is terrible. The next is Starfield. So
I agree with everything you've said, bro, but I just think you misunderstood my point. That's all. I agree with everything you've said.
I was speaking just in general.
All right,
so I'm just not on board with the whole idea that if they buy things, essentially they can keep them from other people. Well, welcome to the industry. Welcome to Nintendo. Welcome to PlayStation. Welcome to, Sega not being smart enough to understand that dynamic.
Yeah.
I agree with everything, just because you said it in such a nice, just soothing tone. I feel comforted. I'm not scared anymore.
He's a wonderful person, WoolleyGamer.
Yeah, I
have
natural
melatonin.
I don't know what the $2 billion is for. I have no idea. Apart from them, look, the idea that people are going to go out, I don't mean this in a bad way, but the idea that people are going to go out and not buy PlayStations over Xbox is just not going to happen for a long time if it does happen. And that's because of, and I'm not saying this because it's a bad thing. That's because of that brand identifying factor.
Yes.
Everyone that I know that plays video games, when I say Madden, they think, oh, PlayStation. Or again, Resident Evil, all these Final Fantasy, oh, PlayStation. And I tell, I think just last week on Twitter, there was this sign that said PS2 in 2003, and look at all the games. And this is why people purchased PS2s in 2003. Every single one of those games, with the exception of one on that list, were third-party games. But nobody that I know back then knew that they were third-party games. They were PlayStation games. They essentially bought the effects of consolidation without having to buy anything, by buying mindshare for a limited amount of time. And that limited amount of time throughout each generation becomes an unlimited amount of mindshare that gives them the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But they were smart enough to make a first party, which Microsoft didn't do. Now, as far as buying all of these studios. Is there a difference between buying the studios for that mind share or just borrowing it for a while like Nintendo did and Sony did? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see.
Well, it removes the control of IP from the third-party publisher. It removes the options for other platforms to make deals with their own exclusives or their own new IPs with
Right,
that
but those options were removed by Nintendo and Sony a long time ago throughout each generation, and no one complained about it.
Square Enix have been able to release games on Xbox, bro. Like they've not been forbidden.
Listen, during I don't know how old you were during the NES era.
About 1993, me, bro. So probably 5, 6.
Right. Okay. So Square Enix couldn't make anything for anybody else but Nintendo. If you wanted to make a third-party game, if you were a third party and you wanted to be on the biggest selling platform in the world in terms of the console space, the NES, you had to only make that game on the NES. That was Nintendo's deal.
Yeah.
So they limited third parties then. Sony's done the same thing because they've had the most successful console. So all of these deals, and you can say, well, it's a better relationship, or Square Enix, they like Sony. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just talking about once these deals occur, you're buying mindshare and you're limiting developers. Developers were limited during the NES era. That's why, in fact, that's one of the reasons why Square Enix, up until Final Fantasy 9, I'm sorry, Final Fantasy 6, was it? Left Nintendo.
So Microsoft.
The other reason was because Nintendo decided to stick with cartridges instead of the CD format. But all of these third parties felt so limited by Nintendo and their licensing fees that they decided to say, the hell with this, we're going somewhere else. And then that mindshare ran out. So the sentiment's the same, what Microsoft is doing. It's just that, A, it's Microsoft, which I agree with. I don't like them as a company. But again, Google and Apple aren't any better. But and they haven't created anything good. So I get it. They're buying stuff and they haven't even created anything that's worth a damn in the industry that anybody talks about or remembers or thinks about.
So no, and where you made some good points there. I want to ask TC a question. TC, when it comes to the $2.1 billion, all right, and I'm thinking that this is probably going to go into maybe coming up with, like we said, what that new game will be that's going to counter a COD in the future. But TC, what was your take? I know you follow a lot of PlayStation news. What was your take?
It's going to be Lair.
Well,
yeah,
I haven't heard something mention Lair in a long time. But what you would call it? No, I covered it today. It's for research and development for live services. So they have live services coming up. The only one I really care about right now is obviously Factions 2. And before this whole Activision's thing and this whole Call of Duty situation, I've always said I prefer Factions as a multiplayer game that I've been playing for like 10 years. So I'm excited to see what they do with Factions 2. Concord, Fair Game, that's what it is. The article, the original article, Nikkei or whatever it was, cites it over there that says that this is for research and development for live services according to their report. So I'm curious to see what they make. But honestly, like these live service titles will be on PC as well. They're gonna be on PlayStation, and from both ends, if you're on Xbox, you're gonna be able to play them as well on PC regardless. So it's gonna be, I guess, combative to COD, but really COD is a game that's a legacy title that we all grew up on from the get-go. It's the yearly sports title that people play for FPS fans. So it's gonna be hard. Again, you can make a game that's better than Call of Duty. There are games like that right now for a lot of people that are better than Call of Duty. Call of Duty I love Call of Duty. I buy it every year, so I'm a fan. But it stagnates a bit. It hasn't really changed much of the formula in a while. Modern Warfare 2019 was somewhat of a change, but there are games that people like more than Call of Duty. There are live services, but it's hard to eclipse the FPS sports title of the year that releases yearly.
Yeah.
Now, when they release it every 2 years, I think the conversation will be interesting then, because there's going to be off years. Who's going to take it that holiday? Is it going to be Battlefield? I would hope so. I'd love to see Battlefield come back.
God bless
Battlefield.
Battlefield.
Is it going to be somebody else? I don't know. For me,
Medal of Honor.
Oh man, I would hope for Medal of Honor to return, because I think people forget Medal of Honor and Call of Duty, if I remember correctly, were like head to head, going on back and forth with each other back in the day.
Were.
And then at one point it kind of just became Call of Duty, and then Battlefield was there every off year, and then it was just
Modern
Call of
Warfare
Duty.
4 that really kind of Call of Duty Modern Warfare that really kind of blew people's
Outshined
mind.
everything.
Well, Call of Duty
But I will
4,
say,
yeah.
but I will say, you still had like Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 that came out. I think Bad Company 1 and 2 came out during that era. Bad Company 2 is one of my favorite FPS titles. But I don't know, so whoever took the helm on Battlefield at EA, some people left over there. I guess this is an example of, yes, you have the IP, but the people in the kitchen, they've left the studio. Battlefield is not what it once was before, and we can clearly see that right now with Battlefield 2042. I hope it comes back.
Embarrassed them big time.
Yeah.
What was the Medal of Honor that came out? Remember the Medal of Honor that came out on the PlayStation 2 where the intro was Normandy and you're driving in on the boats? What was that?
Oh,
it was incredible on the PlayStation 2 when it came out. I remember playing that and thinking graphics could never get better than this.
Oh, every generation we think graphics are amazing. They can't get better.
I forget the name of it. It was so good.
I remember
Frontline. It was Medal of Honor Frontline.
Frontline, yes.
Yeah.
My favorite is Airborne. Airborne is fantastic.
You can still download it, I think, and play that now.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend doing so because
I think that's even not to have a Game Pass plug, but I think that's in Game Pass actually.
You know what? Maybe this thing ain't all that bad.
So wait, let me ask you guys a question. Let me go real quick. The Bad Bit, you just chimed in there for a second.
Uh-huh.
What do we do here? So now let's kind of move forward, right? I want to kind of take this a step forward. You can kind of combine this out. It's kind of a shift slightly, the 2.1 billion. I don't want to move away from that. But what do we do right now? Now we know that the deal is going to go through. We know that this is happening. Now we can move on from that. No more what ifs or is it going to happen or another block. Okay, it's going to go through. Where do you see Sony going in the future here? Is the answer, and I know a lot of people said it on the panel already, is the answer Sony going out and buying more studios? No. Or is it developing internally or really focusing in on games and coming out with a new type of, whether it be genre type game or a new multiplayer game that really engulfs the gamer and gets everybody kind of hyped again? Where does Sony go? Because Microsoft... Go ahead, TC.
I was going to say, fair game. I know it's very Ubisoft when you saw the trailer, very Ubisoft, but fair game. I love that we're talking about games coming up now. I've kind of just waited for you guys to finish the FTC conversation for so long. But fair game, apparently, for Sony, they bought the studio before even releasing their first game. I wonder if that could be the game that's supposed to be a very different type of multiplayer, not something you're used to. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. This is and I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you, TC. This is the part that's exciting because the FTC Call of Duty, PlayStation's gonna be just fine. It's like Worry was talking about earlier. It's PlayStation, we forget, made God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Last of Us,
Ghost of
Uncharted,
Tsushima,
all of which sold phenomenally. Right? We forget that PlayStation has bought Bungie, right? Who is now looking at and evaluating their multiplayer offerings. Okay? Sony knows that they're going to get hit with, by Xbox in terms of Call of Duty being able to be played day one on Game Pass, right? They don't, even again, internally, Jim Ryan's like, we don't really think this is an exclusive play. This is a content play. And so what I'm thinking, if I'm Jimbo, is that we need to soften the blow of losing Call of Duty, which means we need to invest in live service games so that as revenue for Call of Duty goes down and down, seemingly probably every year for Call of Duty, that blow is cushioned by other live service games in your own portfolio. So to me, it's not about making the Call of Duty killer. Right? It's not about making the Fortnite killer. It's about looking at areas where they can thrive in, right? So right now, no one's really figured out the Tarkov formula, and maybe that's an area that PlayStation wants to look at, right? Look at a first-person shooter that's doing fantastic, which is like Rainbow Six Siege, right? That game stands competently amongst the other shooters out there. It's not the Call of Duty killer, but it does really, really well for Ubisoft. And that's what I think Fair Games is going to probably be. When I hear about it, it's exciting because TC, it sounds like it's Payday mixed with Rainbow Six Siege. And those are two games that I greatly admire. I love Rainbow Six Siege. I think it's fantastic. So to me, it's like
because of Payday 3. The timing
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just like, dude, there's so many areas we forget that again. It's the reason why I host a PlayStation show. It is not because I think PlayStation is this altruistic, benevolent company. It's not because I think Jimbo loves me and he's fighting for me. He does not care. He doesn't know who I exist, and he sure as hell doesn't listen to the show. It's because I believe that they have some of the best portfolio of developers and IP in this industry, and now they are forced to tap into it.
I think people forget the PlayStation. Sorry, I think people forget the PlayStation 3 era. So I got a 360 first in the PlayStation 3 era, but then I got a PlayStation 3 afterwards because Gears of War and Halo 3 were like the big things I had to get back then. But the PlayStation platform, I had both of them. But I remember back then for PlayStation 3, they were put in a corner. The ports weren't running well on PlayStation, so you got them on Xbox. Xbox was knocking exclusives left and right. Alan Wake, BioShock, Mass Effect, left and right. They were knocking out exclusives. Halo 3, the big, like Halo was so big at that time that people were putting it next to your Modern Warfare. So at that era, Sony, what did they do? They were put back into a corner, and they greenlit everything that they could. Some of your favorite games that are created today were created in the PlayStation 3 era. Infamous, Uncharted, Last of Us, God of War is PlayStation 2, but some of the best games that you like today were created in that era, and that's because Sony was put in a corner.
And that's the thing. We're gonna get Weird Sony. I love Weird Sony, and Weird Sony comes with some things of I don't know,
Sony,
some
I like
pause for concern because there's gonna be games that are gonna come out. Concord might fail. Fair Games might flop. I don't like that dollar sign in the logo. Let's change that. like there's a lot of risk, and there's the worry, and I think this is why Sony is so is being very meticulous and even shutting down IP before it even starts. Like we mentioned the Call of Duty devs. I forget what their name. Deviation, right? One of those games.
Yeah.
Is because they want to make sure that when they experiment with these games, that they hit and that they don't lose the pedigree that they have in the mind share. What Worry was saying that they have, which is your butt is in a seat when a PlayStation game drops, right? So that is what's happening right now. Is like Sony is not to say put into a corner because they're in a fantastic place. Like they got a gut punch for sure, but now they're synergizing with Bungie, who knows how to make a good multiplayer game. Because oh my god, if you heard that, thought it was extravagant. Because they know how to make a good multiplayer game, and they go, okay, help us do it because we're not that great at it. Right? Like our track record shows we're not the best at it. So show us the way. And I think they have great partners to make that difference in their portfolio. That's why this part right here, they shouldn't go out there and buy Square. They shouldn't go out there to buy Capcom. Shouldn't go out there to buy CD. The fear that Microsoft is this, this entity that is going to consume all gaming is just this like big giant question mark that probably won't happen. But what PlayStation ought to do is create those strategic alliances, create those partnerships that they're so already good at with Capcom, with Square, with CD Projekt Red, with Ubisoft, to make sure that they don't go anywhere. So that means you're throwing investment, you're throwing cash into it, similar like we saw with From Software and Kodakawa, right? PlayStation throwing money their way to make sure that they're going to be a partner with them. And that means deepening the ties with each individual company. So maybe they do something with PlayStation Productions with Ubisoft. Maybe they do something, a deep partnership, with Capcom on the next Resident Evil, something synergistic. Yeah. Those are the things that I want to see Sony do. And those are the things that it plays to Sony's strength. Their strength isn't in buying every single developer known to man.
Right.
That's not their strength. It's about creating relationships and that's what they do well.
Well, you know what's funny, Mr. Babbitt? You said something that's funny. First of all, I love the weird Sony name tag you gave them. I love it. Weird. I absolutely love it. But when Worry was talking about with Mindshare, right? Okay, and right now, PlayStation 5 is the market leader console. They have the Mindshare. I do think that while they still hold that title, they need to do what you just said in the next 5 years. Like, and the reason I say I put a time limit on it is, remember, what ends up happening eventually, and this is where the difference between that Nintendo era that Worry was talking about and where we are now, Microsoft having the war chest and the money to be able to go do what they can start to buy Mindshare. Okay, with time. It's not going to happen next year. It's not going to happen the year after that. People will still know that Call of Duty is synonymous for at least the next 12 months. Because this year's 2023 Modern Warfare 3 leak, okay, is going to be up another PlayStation game. It'll be marketed by PlayStation. That's going to change in 24. So they have to, and that's not going to, by the way, the Mindshare doesn't change in 1 year. I'm saying 5 years. They've got to do what you just said. That weird Sony that you're talking about, that is quite, I love the slogan. That needs to happen more sooner than later, because they need to utilize that leading, that the market lead right now in their favor and grab that Mindshare, whether it be with an Ubisoft game or a Square Enix game, like that foam, I don't know what it's called there, foam, what do they call it?
Foam Stars.
The
next Splatoon, you better watch out.
Apparently good. Is apparently good.
It makes me really happy. I love Splatoon. Yeah,
it's crazy. I've said the exact same thing over the last few days on Twitter. I've said that. So Sony needs to. The likelihood is they're not going to make indiscriminate buyouts where they just buy everything. But they'll either make partial acquisitions, basically shares. They buy shares into companies to secure IP, to protect IP from being bought away. And they'll secure exclusionary partnerships, basically, like they always have, third-party deals. And that's what Sony does best. That's what they've built up a rapport in the industry, as pro industry for that reason. They for the level of investment they pour in. They give freaking Activision $100 million a year for Call of Duty. Like, it's crazy. Like, they've always been heavy investors. And contributors. So I think that's what Sony are going to do. So I'm 100% on board, and I fully agree with you.
The only problem that they're going to have is that they're going to invest to keep third party exclusives, to keep that mind share. There's still going to be third party games, but like you said, the $100 million to Activision now is $100 million to Xbox and Microsoft now. So the money that they used to make off of certain games like Call of Duty was money that they would funnel back in to develop first party games.
Right.
That money may not even be there anymore. And if it is, it's going to be considerably less. So what would that mean for the quality level of a first party Sony going forward? I don't know. That's at least 10 years away.
That's why they're looking at live services. One of the reasons they're pushing
to
for
offset that loss. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think Helldivers is a great opportunity to show a live service game done right. Helldivers 2 looks the dog's bollocks. It looks phenomenal.
The dog's bollocks. I like that.
Bro, it's the dog's bollocks. It is like literally the crown jewels. You see a bulldog and a massive pair of balls, and it's just like that guy's walking around. That guy's walking around like the king of the freaking road. Yeah, that Helldivers 2 for me. I think that bad boy looks and
I have shorts that wear in the summertime. I walk around like that.
Yeah. I have no doubt.
I wear long cargo pants.
Worry when you sit, are the grapes popping out?
Oh, they're breathtaking. They're shaved. They're tan.
Worry's warts are hanging out.
Are they smooth like eggs?
There is warts, guys. There is warts.
It's funny,
boys. I love this conversation we're having. And I could talk about bullets all day, but I do have to go. This thunderstorm is getting really nasty, so I gotta buckle down there. Yeah. It's getting pretty nuts. So I love y'all.
Hey,
you know where to find me, the trophy room.
Mr. Babbitt, by the way, I gotta say, keep doing the great work. I love your show, man. I really do.
Thank you.
Kyle. Always
outstanding work. Yes.
And bad bit. I know I get passionate, bro, but I stan you, bro. Honestly.
Oh, thank you. No, likewise. And when I'm coming back and forth with you, please understand, it's never at a always with respect. and really
here,
playing
bro.
devil's advocate. It's the one thing that we try to do on the trophy room a lot, play devil's advocate a lot, bringing on Xbox folks.
You're
I
an
don't want to
expert.
always agree. Agreeing is really boring to me. I
It is.
want to.
Agreed.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to start a ball.
Would you
you know,
believe
a bar brawl.
this was the pony show? Would you believe this was the pony show? Yet we all had massive disagreements. You know,
I
it's
know.
crazy.
But everybody, I love y'all. Again, you know where to find me. Have a nice one, y'all.
You too.
Take
Thank
care,
you,
Mr.
Mr.
Babbitt.
Babbitt. The great Mr.
Stay safe,
Babbitt,
bro.
everybody. I do appreciate that. I Make Babies, great name in the super chat. He says, so Sony's got to work for it and Microsoft can buy it. Is that what I'm
Well,
hearing?
Microsoft takes, Sony creates. Microsoft has took again. Sony has started creating even more aggressively in response. So Microsoft makes Sony greater. Sony make Microsoft worse.
You know, so what do you guys think? Merc, I want to get Merc's take on this. Merc, you know, I like that you're predominantly PC, if not 100% PC. But
Well, because Merc is smart. That's why.
Merc knew where to go way ahead of time. So shout out to Merc.
What's the best platform to play games, Merc?
The
Let me just ask that question.
platform where the gods play. You already know, man. PC.
But
thank
Merc,
you.
what do
I
you
just
think? Do you think that
wanted to double
Sony
check.
needs to make? Does Sony need to make a counter move? If the and the counter move, I'm asking you, is it buying studios or is it what you're hearing from Bad Bit and you're hearing from Wooly and you heard from Worry as well? And TC, do you think that they can just invest in third-party deals, making that mind share stronger? They still are the market lead. They still have that power right now. That can change.
I mean, look, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, and look, some of those moves are probably evident right now. They just announced that they reinvested what, $2 billion?
Yeah, they're doing
Is all that going to
billion.
be into right two point something
Yeah.
billion? I have to imagine some of that is in response to the possibility of probably dwindling, earnings or profits on the Call of Duty franchise. I have to imagine that's kind of factored into that decision to some extent. Listen, Sony's going to do what Sony does. Sony's been excellent at securing third-party deals. I don't hold them against them. I mean, again, no, you should absolutely do what's best for your business, right? And they're doing exactly that, right? Sony has done excellent at creating, first party, those story-driven games, and just even securing like great games, that have been found that have even been dropped into PS Plus. Like, for example, what was that last game that they dropped into PS Plus that everybody was playing it maybe like 7-8 months ago? What was that called?
Was it one of the indies?
Yeah, it was one of the indie games. What is it called?
Stray?
Oh no, not Stray. It's getting away from me from my memory now. But the point I'm trying to make is Sony's done excellent at curating a selection of games, whether it's through third party deals, whether it's through first party. They're going to be perfectly fine. I don't think that Call of Duty maybe down the line going away is going to affect them in any particular way. I think what Sony's going to do what Sony does best.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Well, what do you think? So you're also thinking that it's a non-issue then. I think Sony can still hold their own. I think Sony is scrambling a bit to find that replacement for multiplayer though, right? Because I mean, losing the marketing rights to COD, okay, that hurts. Worry made a good point on that. TC made a good point on that. But at the end of the day, Wooly, do you think that they need to have their own exclusive multiplayer? And I'm seeing a shout out to Tippy in the chat. He's listing a bunch of different great IP that Sony are sitting on. I mean, you've got everything from, what was it there? Warhawk, I think I'm saying, that's the PS3 era.
Starhawk, great
Yeah,
name.
Warhawk. Yeah.
Right?
Starhawk,
There was
Warhawk.
also, the people are saying, bring back Killzone. Now, Killzone, I will say this much. Killzone has a lot of potential, but it needs to be revamped in a very, very, you know what I mean? It's got to really, really kind of stand out. The way it would launch now, the way it was, I don't think that would steal people.
No, I think to be honest, mate, we talk about Call of Duty here. It's literally like like Worry said, the mind share is enormous, and the name alone carries that franchise through even long periods of mediocrity. Like the name alone is more valuable than the content. It's crazy. So I don't think Sony can possibly like get to a point where a single IP is racking them in 300 million a year, in profit after all costs. I don't see it. I don't think that's the main issue, and I don't want to go into all of that again. However, I do think PlayStation are going to be fine. I've always thought that my main concern was for third-party publishers and how this acquisition will kind of shrink the options for other platforms for publishers, and possibly even contribute to the saturation of other platforms. Because if you're not on Game Pass, your game's not going to sell on Xbox. So you go to other platforms, but there's less platforms now because Xbox is out of the question. So it kind of would result in a lot more games releasing on one or two platforms and possible saturation, which worries me. But for PlayStation itself, I'm 100% on board with what Bad Bit was saying about weird PlayStation and how, weird Sony were the best. Sony, and do I think they've gotten relatively complacent? I think they're sticking to a formula that they believe works, but I think that's a little out of touch for me. Like I find the Horizon series pretty generic personally.
Okay.
I've always struggled. Bro. I've always struggled with that series. Burning Shores is the best of Horizon, but I've struggled to enjoy the others to the same degree as I enjoyed Burning Shores. So I would love them to go back to Killzone, but I'd also love them to go back to SOCOM. Hell, I'd love to see them continue to make new IP. But with new IP, there's risk, and I just hope Sony remain risk takers, and that's kind of I think that's where third-party partnerships are key. Like, you need the Kojimas in the industry, you need the Jade Raymonds in the industry, although she's been acquired with Haven, because they take risks, and I think that's important. So yeah, I don't know if I'm just saying a whole load of nothing here, but I do think I think Sony are going to be absolutely fine, and I'm glad to see them pouring this level of investment in R&D. My theory is if they're adding investment and they're building up more they're pouring more money into investment into R&D, then they're not simply pouring more money into the studios and projects they currently have in development. They're looking outside for more opportunities of investment, and so that tells me more IP, more studios working in collaboration with Sony, but whether second party or strictly, or first party, who knows? But yeah.
No, I appreciate that answer too, and actually that's motivating to hear, Wooly. Shout out to Zalker, good to see Zalker, good to see Colt here too as well. I've been going back and forth with them in the chat here. Great to have them stop by the channel. Got to get them on the show. I've actually been talking to Colt behind the scenes. We'll work out schedules. We got to get these guys on the show again and have some great conversation. Love to have them on and get their takes. I do want to ask a question, and the great Noof Nukem. Noof, this is now I'm going to bring you back to one of your old haunts that really, really got you going on YouTube years ago. So a new version of The Last of Us 2 is in the works for PS5, according to the series composer. Now, the good news here for the great Noof Nukem, who loves his physical edition copy of video games. Noof, I would think just like part 1 came out and it had physical disc available and you can have it, you can get it, blah, 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 and it's something that's a collector's item. Noof, I'll ask you a two-part. A, are you going to buy it for PS5 if it comes out? Because, again, it was a PS4 game coming out. Now it's going to be coming out for the PS5. Will you buy it, and will you get the collector's edition? And do you think it's crazy that Sony continues to remaster or remake, these classics over and over?
It doesn't matter whether it's Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, or any other company for that matter. We've always said, look, if you don't want to buy it, you don't have to spend the money on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's your money to do what you want, to play what you want. We often forget to realize that every generation there are new gamers who are not exposed to the marketing, the media, the games themselves, and are just getting into them now. And why not get the definitive version of the game? I mean, we do it with movies, we do it with CDs. Or formerly CDs, and not many people buy them anymore, except for Noof Nukem, who's very old-fashioned. But you know what I'm saying, right? So, I mean, yeah, like I'd be interested. I just want to see what they're going to do with it. I mean, the problem with the Naughty Dog games is, and that even goes back to the PS3 version of The Last of Us, is Naughty Dog makes just amazing games. They make amazing games, period, that look and run great on almost any, console. Like, you go back on the PS3 and play The Last of Us, and it still looks absolutely phenomenal. Like, they're one of those companies that make great narratives, but they also, from a tech standpoint, they've got that motion capture, they got that facial animation and stuff that stands up better than most games do today. So that's the thing. Like, in The Last of Us 2, I love the game, despite what a lot of people go out there and say. I really love the game. I really love the narrative of Abby and finding out her backstory and how it all tied in. I know a lot of people didn't. I mean, I hated Abby, honestly, when at the first part of that game, but by the end of it, I actually liked her a hell of a lot more than I liked the other little shit there. So
Ellie? You liked Abby more than Ellie?
I like Abby more than Ellie. Honestly, Ellie annoyed the living piss out of me.
So listen, so TC, I'm glad Noof brought this up. So and listen, you don't understand me being the diehard Last of Us fan that I am. So much respect to Ellie, the character, the voice actor, the whole nine, right? I will say, as I played through 2, I couldn't stand Abby the first half. And I think if Neil Druckmann was listening, he goes, this is just as how I intended. By the time I got to the end of The Last of Us Part 2, man, I tell you, I was Team Abby. And I say that because
both of y'all are crazy.
I'm sorry, TC. No, TC. Well, TC, tell me where I'm wrong. Where am I wrong, though?
Narrative really wasn't that far different than Ellie. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah. So TC,
Yeah,
where
they were very similar to Noof's point.
One sort of created the other. It's kind of like it's like that Joker Batman theme. Well, you created me. Well, I created you first.
Yes, great way to say
that whole story, because it seems like we're talking about it. That whole story is just shoved in. That whole story, the logic of revenge is bad. It doesn't make sense when you just retconned one character. By that logic, you can retcon any character that Abby or Ellie slaughtered through the entire game and make another story off of it. That's why The Last of Us 2 story, to me, was not good. It was like, we need to make a sequel. How do we make a sequel? Okay, so there was this cure. All right, you remember that random NPC character we had? Yeah, let's make him one of the most valuable fucking characters out of nowhere, and then let's bring him to 2. And then they were talking about how Joel deserved to die and all that bullshit. And I'm just like, everybody in this game, you guys have made it pretty clear, is a piece of shit. Everybody needs to die, basically, is what's going on here. Because everybody is just garbage. You made Ellie a garbage human being. You made, Abby, we just got introduced to her, but she's also, all her people around her tell her that she's an asshole. She's a piece of shit, except that one character that she was with until the end.
Love.
But that's the thing. The story in The Last of Us Part 2, no matter how many times people try to tell me that you got to understand it is about revenge, it is about... That is a garbage story tacked onto a game that they needed to make a sequel. Outside of that, for me personally, this is somebody who adores Faction to hell and loves Last of Us Part 1. Outside of the story, Last of Us Part 2, the reason why I want Factions 2 so badly is because Last of Us Part 2, to me personally, so anybody... I don't really watch the chat because a lot of craziness goes on there, but to anybody else out there, to me, Last of Us Part 2 has the best third-person mechanics of any game that I've ever played personally, and the visuals, obviously, we already know they're top tier.
Yeah, that's right. BRAP, I'll give you the mic. I just want to give TC some credit, even though I don't agree with him. I gotta say, the passion in TC, the passion you got there is fantastic, buddy. Absolutely. Oh, Noof, I'm just seeing you have to leave soon as well. The great Noof Nukem. Noof, did you want to? I'm after we get done with this is my last topic. I wanted to just kind of.
Can you guys hear me?
I do now, Worry.
Yeah, we can hear you, Worry.
Okay.
I hear you now. Noof, do
I'm
you want?
actually outside on the phone, so I wasn't sure if I can connect.
Yeah, brother. Yeah.
Noof, do you have to leave right now, or can you wait till this is our last topic?
Oh, the one we're on right now?
Yep.
Yeah, then I can wait. I just don't think I got enough time to get into anything new.
No, absolutely. BRAP, go ahead. I took the mic away from you.
Yeah, no worries, Mooch. Look, I don't disagree.
Please take the mic away from BRAP.
No, I do talk. I've talked a lot this show.
Hey, that's all right, BRAP. That's all right. It was your turn to talk. You had a couple weeks where you didn't get a chance to, so it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I was quiet for a couple weeks. And, anyhow, and so, and I'm having thoughts about worries. Never mind. But anyhow, I don't totally disagree with TC. I mean, I prefer the story of The Last of Us Part 1, but I kind of with you guys. Like, I didn't care for Abby at first, and then I was like, wait a minute, her plight and her motivation is similar to Abby's. And I think the other thing we have to remember too is that this is taking place in a post-apocalyptic world where, I mean, like, let's face it, all norms, rules are out the window at this point. It's kind of a free for all.
And they managed to find a football stadium with testosterone in it.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you know what's funny though, Brap, you just made a good point. You know, TC, to just piggyback off of what Brap said, the thing that you didn't like about Revenge, and you guys know, everyone listens to the show and the channel, I'm a huge Walking Dead, the New York City thing with what is it there? Jeffrey Dean Morgan and
last 6 episodes coming up.
It starts on Sunday night. I can't wait. But hear me out. Everything in the post-apocalyptic world is revenge, TC. It's survival of the fittest. It's your supplies are my supplies, and revenge. That's not
the thing I had against it. Even in Last of Us Part 1, you had people everybody's trying to go for themselves. I'm saying the story of Last of Us Part 2, not the acting, not the voice acting, not the motion, not all of that. I'm saying the story in itself is a kind of, for me personally, and again, I've talked about I have a full review of The Last of Us 2 on my channel that was like one of the few reviews I have ever. But it's just the story itself is a weak story that feels that once you play it and realize they retconned an NPC to be one of the most major characters, that's a weak story. And they try to tell you a story between Ellie and Abby, and they make both of them pieces of shit, and everybody's a piece of shit. And in the end, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Nothing in the end matters. That's it.
Look, TC,
nothing really matters.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying your opinion is wrong. I think it's fair to have that.
You can go ahead and say my opinion is wrong.
No. I think that's
opinion. I don't really care.
Look, gaming is art. If you love gaming, you understand that gaming is an art, and art is often subject to interpretation.
That's right.
I don't disagree with you, TC. I do have a different opinion, and it goes back to being a post-apocalyptic world where, they're both pieces of shit because they live in a shitty world, and they're doing what they can do to survive. And taking Abby's father, who was kind of like an NPC, you're right. I don't necessarily, I don't look down on that as much, because I think that clearly this was someone who was tied to Ellie's story, as this person was supposed to, extract whatever they were supposed to extract from her to save the world.
And we also don't know, in that situation, we don't know if it actually worked, if it was going to work. That whole thing just scrapped the whole situation over there.
No, we don't. But the idea of hope is enough, considering the world that they're in, and that mankind presumably has lost hope and has on its at its wit's end, and now we have this chance of redemption, this chance to go back to life the way it was prior to this this outbreak, and that's taken away. I mean, is that enough to drive mankind even off the edge even further? Then that's why
the story of post-apocalyptic and the cure, they could have made a way more interesting story for the sequel, a way more interesting story about this. The sequel wasn't even about a cure or anything. It was just about revenge is bad and seeking revenge and realizing that it won't get what you want back. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's such a it's kind of almost boring for me. It's you retconned a character. You need it. It really feels like they needed to make a sequel and they didn't know how. Where were they gonna go? And the thing about it is, they're like, if it wasn't for the leak, they needed to grab you with something. What is the biggest thing that they can grab you with to make you want to play this entire game? And then shove down this idea of revenge is bad. Kill Joel. The whole thing, if we didn't have the leak, if nobody had the leak, the whole thing that kept you going for that 20 hours was Joel is dead. I need to kill this person.
But TC, would you agree that revenge is revenge is the motivator? Is a motivator for Joel?
Sure.
I mean, think about this for a second. His daughter was taken from him, and now if you play The Last of Us, even if you look at the TV show, he's taking Ellie
as
I said Abby. I'm sorry, Ellie as his daughter, and now he's taking back something that was taken from him. That in a sense is almost like revenge. I think that the undercurrent of revenge has been.
That's
I think
very
something
fickle.
that's been
I don't know
persistent.
what revenge revenge on the universe for taking away
revenge.
his
Yeah, revenge. Saying you know fuck.
no.
Yeah, saying F the world. Revenge. Like, hey, wait a minute.
For me,
You're not.
I don't
like you're not going to take this away from me. You've taken something of importance, something that meant something to me already. You're not doing it a second time.
But personally, I don't see it like that. I haven't seen anybody see it like that. It's a different take. I haven't seen anybody see it like that. Joel himself wasn't fully into the Ellie situation even during the, I don't know, midway point through the story. That changed because of the relationship that developed between them, and then he became a father figure. That wasn't about him saying fuck the universe and I'm gonna take Ellie. It's because he became that father figure for Ellie, and that bond was created. I don't know what the
but as a father figure, previous father, because he was a father before, he assumed that father figure role in Ellie's life.
Let's just remember what Troy Baker said. Troy Baker said, sorry, go on, Brap. Go ahead,
Wooly. Go ahead, man. I've been talking a lot, so go ahead, man.
Troy Baker said that Joel didn't betray the world. He saved the world because Ellie was his world. And that's the thing. Literally he lost everything, and he had nothing from after Sarah's death, and he was a shell of a man, and angry, brutal, basically gun for hire to get jobs.
He was a killer.
And,
he was a killer
and to make a living, and all he had was Tess, but like even that was more cordial kind of partners, where he had love for her, but they weren't like they were more business lovers, and Ellie became his world, and that world needed him. His world needed him, and he would have done it all over again. He said to Ellie in part 2 if he had to, like, and Ellie didn't even know she was going to be put to death. That she wouldn't survive it. She didn't know it was certain. They didn't tell her that. So, like, I think there's layers to this. There's layers, and also like people have this idea that like Joel was made to look clumsy and stupid. Like apparently he exposed him. He revealed who he was. No, he didn't. Tommy was super embracing of the of Abby and Abby's friends, because Tommy had been cultured into trusting people again, because he was civilized. He was part of a community, and he was all embracing, and he told them Joel's name, and Joel was shitting it. He was really on guard, and he was cautious. Why did he have his back to Abby? Because she was the girl around Ellie's age who he just freaking saved. He saved her life. She was the lowest threat. So when she blew his leg off with a shotgun, of course it was shocked, but you had this large outrage on Twitter saying Joel's a fool, Joel's an idiot, like, and people just didn't get it, like what was going on. We learned at the end of The Last of Us that Joel was reassured that Ellie did still love him in that chat that they had on the porch. Like that was the last.
That part killed me.
Yeah,
that part hurt so much.
that was the last conversation they had before Joel died.
You know what's great?
And it was, they were bastards for leaving that at the end. Bastards, but I loved them for it as well. Like, Joel was at peace with Ellie when he died, and I went through the whole fucking game, pardon my French, thinking that Joel died sad, and that really hurt. That I found that difficult to deal with, and it made me have so much anger. But then, like, when you saw Ellie regretting her decisions when she was like in the theater fighting Abby, and she was scared because Abby was just like this unstoppable force, like, and she was like, oh shit, what do I do? And she became quite cowardly, and she kind of was like, she gave in and submitted, and she was like, I'm sorry. Like, it was so fucking real. It was so believable. Like, and I think that's what they were going for, was believability, not freaking Hollywood, like, Hollywood character tropes, where Ellie has to be this way, and Joel has to be this way, and Abby has to be this way. By the end of it, I freaking loved Abby. I thought Abby was an amazing character, and I can't wait to find out what happens with her in part 3. I just think it gets a lot of unnecessary hate, And again, like you said, the gameplay aspect of The Last of Us Part 2 is unbelievable. It's
Top
freaking
tier.
insane. Yeah.
I want to say this much. I want to say that's how powerful this game is. There's a lot of people that are Xbox guys as well in my chat, and they're literally saying they're having conversations about whether they think we're right or wrong on this debate between myself, TC, BRAP, Wooly. This is great. Iron Lance says the Civil War is funny. It's not Civil War. Having a discussion, a debate on something this deep in a game, that just speaks to how well the game is, and you tip your cap to Neil Druckmann and the team. I do want to say this much. What a great show we've had. I've told everybody that I keep it at 2 hours. We're a little over the 2 hour mark now here in New York. And I got to tell you something. What an outstanding show. Great to have the amazing chat. The panel tonight, I'm sitting here in awe of this amazing panel. Great conversation. We didn't just talk about one subject. I thought we covered a plethora of different items on this week. What didn't really come out with major news, but yet still a lot to talk about. Please hit that like button, guys, as you're still here. We still have close to 400. We were almost at 500. Let's get at least up to 200 likes. I'd really appreciate that. Appreciate, what is it there? Cursed Kane also for subscribing to the channel. Please do hit that subscribe button as well. I'll go in reverse order here and just say, wow, just amazing. And the guys that had to leave early, I'll do a quick plug at the end as well for. But shout out to the great TC. TC, great to have you here with us tonight, buddy. I'm glad you got to sound your opinion on not only the FTC thing, but also, I got to know your true feelings on The Last of Us Part 2, which now the next time you're on, we are really going to get into it, TC. TC, thanks for being here, buddy. Let everybody know where they can find you, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was great. I'm glad in the future we're going to be moving on from FTC.
Yes.
More gaming talk. I love that.
Correct.
You can find me on YouTube, TCMF Games, Twitter, TCMF Games. Facebook, Instagram, I guess Threads as well if you want to use that. TCMF Games everywhere. Thank you.
Appreciate that, TC. Outstanding.
I'm gonna start calling him FTCM Games.
That's funny.
Yo, shout out to, I appreciate full stack in the chat. He says, even though I love Xbox, I love Mooch, best voice in the business. Thank you, full stack. I appreciate that. TC, great to have you here. I appreciate that. The great Noof Nukem, boom boom kaboom. He was here in the room. And Noof, I got to tell you something. Outstanding tonight, buddy. Great to get your takes on everything gaming. As I always say on Crossfire, nobody's wrong. It's everyone's opinion. You're entitled to it. Noof, outstanding to have you back on the show. I would like to have the number to your employer so I can just ask for your Fridays off because I'd like to have you on a lot more. Noof, let people know where they can find you. And as always, it is a treat to have you on the show, buddy. Thank you.
I greatly appreciate it, Mooch. Obviously, I wouldn't be here without you. Like I said, you're the originator, the inspirator. And yeah, I'm just another masturbator. You know how it goes? No, chills. It was a great show, amazing panel, awesome opinions, and great rhetoric here through these conversations. Always an honor to be here, man, hanging out with you guys and just having these discussions and seeing some of the great conversations and debates that go on throughout the chat as well. So fantastic stuff. Look forward to coming back in the future. Glad that at least my phone could pull off what my PC and my stupid Chromebook couldn't do. So that's a good sign. Anyway, guys, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Mooch's channel.
Thank you.
And if you like what you heard tonight, let me know, what's the deal. And if you're looking to find more of Noof Nukem, you can find me on my own podcast as I host. It's called The Gaming Fuse on Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. That is The Gaming Fuse with Noof Nukem and company. Love to see you there. Take care, everybody, and have a great weekend.
And actually, go over and please subscribe and check out Noof's show. It's outstanding. These guys, they focus on gaming and they focus on humor. They want to make you laugh. And honestly, they are a great team. Noof, you're always making me laugh, so I appreciate that. Thank you for keeping things fun, and I appreciate it, buddy. Always been great to have you on the show. The great WoolleyGamer. Wooly, I want to take a second here. I should have done it in the beginning of the show. I didn't get a chance to. I would like to thank Mrs. WoolleyGamer as well for allowing you to come on to the show. But I don't mean it that way at all. I mean that it is late in the UK, and I know that family time, especially with
more sauce, Mooch. Just getting more sauce.
I just want you to know I really appreciate every single time you can come on the show. I know it's valuable time with your family that you're missing. So, Wooly, I want to say thanks so much, buddy. I love your takes. I call them hot takes on Twitter. Always good. If you're not following Wooly on Twitter, you're missing out. But, Wooly, great takes tonight. Loved your opinion as always. Let people know where they can find you. And, of course, I can't wait till you come back on the show.
Mooch, it's always an absolute honor to be here with the big boys, and I really do appreciate it. It's been vibrational. It's been vibrational.
What is vibrational?
It's the soothing, deep rumble of your beautiful voice, bro. Same with BRAP, same with you, Mooch.
That's great.
Same with yeah, it's been vibrational. It's been lovely.
Thank you. Well, my voice is completely natural, like Abby.
Absolutely.
Oh my God,
bro,
you're built like a brick shit house, but Abby, she's a different level. Anyway, but yeah, I just
worry mocapped her. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
just a quick one. I've had a few people asking me, including Colt Eastwood, bless him, asking me in the chat if I'm back on Twitter yet, a little sarcastically. So I'll just give you the rundown. I was going to leave Twitter because, like BRAP, I'm fed up of the false equivalencies and disingenuous arguments. Like, people bring up like deflections just to try and like dismiss nuanced shit that really we've been able to discuss tonight. But a lot of people in the chat like Cry Harder, Copium, and all them stupid, like, I don't know, idioms.
Can I just interrupt real quick? The issue is there's a lot of people on Twitter that are intellectually bankrupt and lazy.
Yeah. I was getting sick of. I struggle to let things go.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Go ahead.
Can I interrupt real quick? I just want to say I can't believe BRAP actually interrupted. It never happens.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. But go ahead.
Go ahead, Wooly.
Like Sleepy Joe, where I forget stuff. So when it's fresh, it's top of mind. I gotta say it.
Yeah. I'm similar. I struggle to let things go, so I respond. I give everybody a piece of my time, and that's a mistake. That
it's a huge
sometimes
mistake.
It's a mistake. It's a mistake, and it got to the point where I was just like, "Fuck this." Sorry, pardon my language. Like, I'm sick of this. I'm done with wasting my time responding to replies to my posts that are nonsense, and so I decided I was going to say bye to everyone, and I did. I've had Zubitech. I've had, a lot of really close friends, people who I rate highly, both people who are quite prolific in the community and people who I just really appreciate on a mutual level. Ask me to consider staying, but make my tweets private. So I've been doing that. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget to put my tweets, make my tweets private so that only people I follow can respond. But most of my tweets now are limited to only those I follow, and it makes things a lot easier for me. It just prevents me from responding to a load of shite in the replies. So that's where I'm at with Twitter. If you really wanted to know, Cole, or whether you were just taking the piss, I don't know, but that's the answer. But for those who do want to follow me, you can find me at Woolley_gamer. And yeah, it's been a hell of a show. I've really enjoyed myself, and Mooch, I really do appreciate you, brother. Thank you, and I look forward to being on again in the future.
Absolutely, Wooly. It's great to have you here, and he's right. You wear your truth on your sleeve, Wooly. You put it out there because that's just the person you are. Especially when you do your short, I call them vlogs. You kind of do a bit while you're at work, and you say, I got to get this off my chest when some kind of news breaks. So I do recommend you go over and check out Wooly on Twitter. Wooly, always great to have you here, and again, congratulations on. I know she not a newborn, but nonetheless, congratulations and much love to the family. Much love to the family. The great worry. You know, it was funny. You were like, I gotta go. I can't get into the booth, and then I saw you appear again, which was great. And I said, oh, good, he's back. So Worry, listen, this is almost similar to the conversations we have during the week. Worry. Nonetheless, I want to say thanks for being here, buddy. And you were here for the whole show. I know you also have family and things going on in the background, and you took time to be here with us tonight. So let everybody know you had a new video pop today as well. Let everybody know where they can find you, and thanks for being here.
3 places. The first is Twitter, WoolleyGamer. The second is YouTube, WoolleyGamer. And the third is the unspecified football stadium with Abby trying to get her bench up past 185, which is what she said it was in the game, which is completely weak. We're going to have to up her dosages, maybe do some extra cardio. I don't know. Those 3 places you can find me.
Well, it's great to have you here, buddy. I really appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, Basement Radio Arcade Podcast. BRAP. Let people know where they can find you. And honestly, great show tonight, buddy. Really appreciate your takes and your hot takes on all the hot topics today. Let people know where they can find you. Okay, I can't wait to talk to you again next week.
Yeah, no, Mooch, great show, man. Great show. Great panels always.
Yes.
Great to see Worry Walnuts here with us for the entire show.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? I'm sorry, can I interrupt real quick? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't have to interrupt. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You know, it's funny. I've actually been podcasting with Worry for almost 10 years.
It's almost 10 years,
believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost 10 years. Worry, I think you may remember who we first started podcasting with back in 2015, I believe. But anyhow, look.
Wonderful person.
Yeah, wonderful person. But no, Mooch, great show. Great to be here, man. And I got to say, Final Fantasy 16 is great. I just finished it.
Yes.
I don't know if you finished it, Mooch. But
no, I'm still playing through.
Yeah, absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
it's like an MGS4 tier experience for me.
Yeah, it's great. And
really?
Well, I say it's not on par with MGS4 in terms of quality. Like that is my second favorite game of all time. Maybe it's joint with Death Stranding, and my first is MGS3. But it's what I mean by that is it's one of them rare once in a generation experiences, or very rare in a generation experience where you just carry through this incredible world and story, and it's just non-stop blowing my mind. Like around every corner is something that amazes me, and it's one of them rare games where I just can't put it down.
That's blowing your mind. You and I need to hang out then, because it is just so boring to me. Holy crap.
Mate, I love it. I love it, man. But hey, I'm weird. I like Elix. I think Elixir is an amazing series. So
Elix is actually a better RPG.
No comment till next week, apparently.
It's not a better game, but the RPG mechanics are much better in Elix.
I'm not after an RPG with Final Fantasy 16. I was just after what I wanted in the game is what I've been given in spades. From the environments, the different environments you go through, and the way the world is just the whole. Even though it's in segments, you feel like you're part of this huge world, and you're going on this epic quest. I've not long got my Chocobo, and even though I've spent what feels like dozens of hours, I'm at a point that's not even far into the game. Apparently, people are saying, just wait, you've not seen anything yet, and I'm like, what? This, I feel like I've been on a massive adventure, and I'm barely scratching the surface. And I'm excited for the Final Fantasy difficulty mode, because apparently the game completely changes in that mode as well. So the game's offering me so much in spades. I'm really happy with it. The combat's incredible as well. The icon abilities that you unlock, and how each icon ability has multiple different ways of being used, including using it to parry, and it changes the ability. It's crazy, man. I'm just loving it.
No, the game is actually something quite special, and you guys are way ahead of where I am, so I'm looking forward to play more of it this weekend. It's my first weekend. I'm actually home for the entire weekend, so I actually get some time to play it. I'm looking forward to it starting tonight into tomorrow. But Basement Radio Arcade Podcast, BRAP, I'll go ahead and plug it. That's Wednesdays at 9 p.m.
Yeah, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Come hang out with us.
Absolutely. I want to give a couple shout outs real quick. Merc305 had to leave. That's at Merc305 OFC over on Twitter. Go over and check him out over there. The Great Gaming Forte couldn't make it tonight. He's working as usual. It's at gaming_forte, Forte. Go over and check him and the great SloMoBackSlap out at DPS Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern as well. Button Basher, who couldn't make it tonight, but he did stop in the chat. He is at B Basher. So it's BBASHER for life. Shout out to Button Basher and the great, of course, Mr. Babbit that had to leave a little bit early as well. I want to say thanks to everybody here. Thank you for the super chats, guys. Thank you so much for everything. The panel was amazing. I'm in awe. We'll see you next Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Go game. Go enjoy yourselves. Have a healthy debate. And we need to
Starfield's RPG of the year.
Oh, there. And I guess we'll end it on that note, because I can't get any higher than that.
It might be game of the year, man.
It might be.
Throw that out there.
Might not. Nonetheless, we'll see you guys next Friday.
3, bro. Baldur's Gate 3.
Baldur's Gate 3 is good. Could be a
That's going to be the
solid
RPG of the year.
You know, BRAP really does have the record where I can't even end the show because BRAP's like, oh, hold on a second. Let me say something.
Well, that was Woolley just talking, not me.
I thought you
talking now, bro. Shush.
No, this is great. Honestly, outstanding show, guys. We'll see you next Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Peace out. Good night.